Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. The King of God, Asgard signed 100 million years. Chapter 61. Carol wanted to be strong since she was a child, and felt that she was not weaker than others. At the moment, Ron looked down like this, looking at her as if he was looking at his subordinates. How could Carol not be angry? Therefore, unwilling to give in, she directly controlled the energy in her body. Her ability is superb and she quickly learns to control it. Definitely, simply channeling energy into one's own hands. Boom. Carol pointed at Ron with both fists, and directly blasted the most cannon. However, the sound of metal clashing was heard again. Ron continued to remain motionless. Carol's energy poured into Ron without any damage. "Have you played enough?" asked Ron. Carol's personality is a bit bad, so he decided to educate the other party. Boom. Ron punched her directly on the shoulder, sending her flying. Carol didn't slap him in the face, so naturally he wouldn't slap Carol in the face. This is called reciprocity. Carol's body flew upside down onto the wreckage of the plane, and then a human-shaped concave hole appeared on the wreckage. "Ah!" Carol yelled, and then Ron continued to punch her to educate her. Carol's current situation is that he only has energy on his body. And she has absolutely no idea how to use it. Most importantly, she doesn't have any such fighting skills yet. So, she rushed up, and she was hit by Ron, and she rushed up, and was hit again. Tell you to believe in aliens. It's uneducated to call you so irritable. Tell you not to listen to me. While teaching her, Ron beat her away. Avertisement. Then, an unknown number of marks appeared on the nearby ground. In some places, even the ground is cracked. It can be called a mess. In the end, Carol, who had been beaten out countless times, stood up again. This time she finally calmed down. Realized the huge gap between himself and Ron. "What you up to?" she asked calmly. "Listen to me, I can teach you how to become stronger." Ron seduced, and Carol agreed after thinking about it. "Don't do bad things." Carol made a request of her own. "Definitely." Ron finished, and then taught Carol how to control his energy. Although what's inside her isn't magic. But magic is a spiritual thing, and it is somewhat similar to any energy. Take control. Naturally there are similarities. Carol's ability is very high, and he was able to control his energy very quickly. But these energies have already become part of her body. "Here comes the trouble you caused, fix it." Ron looked at the sky, then said. A carry warship flew over again. Anger flashed in Carol's eyes, and when he saw the battleship land, his whole body radiated light again. The reddish light became more intense on her body, and her hair was also calm and automatic. Then, Carol slowly gathered energy towards her own hands. Boom. Her fists collided. Boom. Invisible's energy rays radiated to the surroundings, and the members of the Star Troopers who just got off the battleship were directly knocked into the air by the energy. As if forming a hurricane, they flew upside down for a long time before falling to the ground. Carol glanced at Ron. Except for the messy clothes on Ron's body, there was no fluctuation in his whole body. Even if Carol shot with all his strength, it would only feel a little bit to hit him. And the powerful constitution will make him self-healing instantly. This is similar to Wolverine and Deadpool's ability. If you want to kill Ron, unless you get the kind of damage that kills him instantly, you can recover quickly. His sun is not white. Except that the constitution keeps getting stronger, all the solar energy is stored in his body, just like mana, which can be used at any time. Carol squeezed his fist and walked slowly towards the Kree. "Who are you?" Holding the only blue-skinned woman named Minerva, Carol asked. Minerva was lifted up by the delicate-looking Carol, shocked. The main thing is that Carol at the moment is still wearing the Air Force costume, which was a little tattered in the explosion, making her look a little dirty. But the strength is so strong. The strong sense of difference shocked Minerva even more. "We are the Kree Empire Star Troopers. Who is he among you?" Carol pointed to the headless corpse beside him. Seeing the uniform on her body, Minerva immediately knew it was Young Rog. She swallowed, and wanted to speak harshly, but after thinking about it, she gave up. "Rot, our captain," Minerva said. Carol nodded. "Tell me your purpose." Afterwards, Minerva said it out loud. With absolute strength, she dared not hide anything. Even the rest of the Star Troopers dare not speak. When she heard that they were coming to capture Marvell, aka Dr. Lawson, Carol had to accept that she was also a Kree. So, she's been dealing with aliens all along. With a curse at the beginning of F, she threw Minerva to the ground. She hasn't figured out how to deal with these aliens yet. Do it. However, she didn't think about how to do it, and the people from Star Troopers had already done it. Boom. The bullets from the energy weapon hit her, and Carol just shook her whole body. There was a gun hole in her body, but it only pierced through her clothes and did not hurt her. Carol yelled angrily, and then punched him with an imperial fist. That black member directly absorbed all the energy. Then the energy detonated directly in his body. Boom. His body was instantly torn apart, and blood was sprinkled on all his companions. Minerva looked at Carol, finally knowing what fear is like. If something happens to us, the Carey Empire will send warships to destroy this planet. What Carol can't stand the most is being stimulated by others. So she snorted coldly. Then let it come. If the Kree Empire doesn't come, I'll still go find trouble with it. Carol flew straight into the air as she spoke, and the intense light on her body directly enveloped her. The eyes glowed as if they had learned the Kryptonians' infrared beams. Then, she flew directly towards all the Star Troopers who were still alive. Just for a moment, all survivors explode. The current Carol doesn't have any relationship with them, so naturally he doesn't know what it means to be merciful. Immediately got angry, flew over and punched each person. In your current situation, you can't go back. Ron looked at Carol appreciatively and said, "This temper tantrum is a bit interesting. I didn't even think about going back." With this ability, Carol doesn't want to go back to the Air Force Base anymore. Carol's childhood dream was to fly. And now, she finally knows what a real flight feels like. What Air Force Base is this? Is it as fun to fly as she does by herself? Soon, Carol walked into the Kree battleship, and when she came out, she already had a Kree uniform on her body. However, the uniform can be changed as she pleases. According to her own idea, she directly changed into a blue and red uniform. Straight ahead as a star marker. This change is too big. The original Carol should have been taken away by Young-Rog, and he will not return to Earth until a few years later, and a series of things will happen. Definitely, Ron didn't care about that. What he cares about is, will Nick Fury still become the One-Eyed Man? Soon, Ron and Carol disappeared with a Kree warship. When the Air Force found the damaged fighter jet, they were taken aback by the situation at the scene. The burnt remains of Black aren't scary. The scary thing is that there is a human-shaped concave hole on it, and there are many, human, marks on the surrounding ground. How did you do that? A flightman stomps the ground beneath his feet. Bang bang. I stomped hard twice, but didn't leave any marks. There are still bloodstains, but it has been integrated with the ground. Someone shouted, and then many people surrounded the past. However, there were still a lot of blues bloodstains. There was a lot of blood, left everywhere, but there were no corpses or anything like that. When Ron left, a few fireballs directly destroyed the corpse. He never thought of leaving anything good for Mi Jun. How on earth is this done? There is no pattern in the trajectory of the blood spray, and it is not known what weapon did it. There was only one flight member's body on the fighter plane, and according to the judgment, it should be Dr. Lawson. And one more, I don't know, it may have disappeared, or it may be that the fire left no trace. The MI Army basically couldn't investigate anything, and could only list this incident as a top-secret file. Carol held the Kree battleship and followed Ron flight into the ice and snow at an extremely fast speed. The surrounding area is completely bare, and you can't even see any other colors. There are endless hundreds. Not to mention living things in this place, there are not many plants to be seen. Carol felt relaxed and happy for a moment, she had never seen such a scene. Seeing the base that suddenly appeared, she said silently, "Are you a polar bear?" "No, I'm from Asgard." Ron took her all the way, and then let her know what Asgard is. Gods in Norse mythology. Does this really exist? Carol was a little confused. She didn't doubt Ron's strength, but she didn't believe in the fairy tales. There are aliens, why can't there be genius doctors? Ron asked immediately. His current position needs to make others fear him, so naturally he cannot say that he is just an alien. There is a saying that is good, the so-called gods are nothing but powerful people. But as long as he doesn't think so, it's fine. Carol nodded immediately. What do you need me to do? Surrender to me. Ron looked at her a little domineeringly. Carol was quick to agree. Following the previous beating, she had already woken up. But I also have conditions. I can't do things that are not good for the Earth, and I won't stay on the Earth forever. Carol really thought so. Ron accepted her terms. When I need you back, you have to show up. Okay. Carol immediately agreed. She returns whenever Ron calls her. As for how to summon, it is relatively simple. There is no problem for Ron, who is a mage. Can I go now? Carol couldn't wait to enter the universe. Since she found out that she can fly and enter the universe at will, her thoughts have been expressed on her face. After all, this was her childhood dream. So for this crooked Earth, I don't want to stay for a moment. Not yet. The Kree called the fleet. Ron said without changing his expression. You have to solve the trouble you caused, definitely, and you can also get the star map of the Kree Empire by the way. Carol was finally happy again when she heard it. I think Ron has a point. Even if she can fly freely in the universe, but not knowing the way is not very embarrassing. At this time, the star map is very necessary. After all, everything in the universe is vast and dark. If there is no map, even a real old driver will not know where to drive. Then, Carol began to wait anxiously. She wished that the Carey fleet would arrive soon. Then, the Kree fleet actually came. After all, the Star Troopers can be regarded as a very important organization of the Kree Empire, and it was completely wiped out here, so it is impossible not to send a fleet. But unlike Ron's impression, it wasn't the accuser Ronan's warship that came, but a random fleet. After all, Ronan's arrival is because of Tesseract, and now that Tesseract is not exposed, naturally it will not come. When the battleship arrived, Carol naturally flew out directly. Her whole body turned into a red light, and flew into the universe with a swoosh. And without any nonsense, having waited impatiently for a long time, she rushed directly towards the Carey fleet. Ah! Carol roared in the universe. Although she couldn't make any sound, she could feel the surging experience in her body. Then I saw her light, like a drill, directly rushing into the Kree battleship. Boom boom boom. The battleship literally starts to fall apart from end to end, and that's just because Carol walks through it. Ron stroked his chin, as if he could do the same thing as Carol. It's just that Carol used energy shock when piercing through the battleship, so he needs to switch to another energy zone. But no matter what ability, it is the same reason. Definitely, the most important thing about this trick is to be handsome. In less than a second or two, a battleship was destroyed. The Kree didn't react to it all. For example, now, the remaining Carey warships are immediately stunned. Originally, only 3 warships came, and 1 was lost before the battle started. It wasn't until now that they realized that what flew over wasn't a weapon, but just a person. Run, back to the node. The blue-skinned Kree commander who didn't know his name shouted immediately. Then, the 2 warships picked up and fled. Carol didn't go after them and destroy them either. Why don't you catch up? Supergiant waited until Carol came back and asked. She saw this scene through the true knowledge spar, and it nearly dropped her jaw. I'm going to let them know how to destroy their battleship, and the Earth will be fine. Carol tilted her head and said, next, I will find trouble with them. Successful sign-in, continuous sign-in for 3,100 years, and reward, Anubis Amulet. Amulet of Anubis. One of the 3 treasures of Dr. Fate, which can summon the power and minions of the Egyptian death god Anubis. Why? Dr. Fate, one of the 4 most powerful mage in the 600th world. Always compared to Dr. Strange. There are a total of 8 generations of Dr. Fate, and the source of power comes from the Naboo helmet, which allows them to use the power of the Naboo god. In addition to the first time, there are also the Amulet of Anubis and the Cloak of Fate. In short, he is very strong. Ron is grabbing DC's wool mattress. However, this thing has a great background, but it is not as good as the Naboo helmet and the Fate cloak. Definitely, this is for Ron. Also, this is the power of another Egyptian god in another world. Can it be transmitted to the Marvel world? What makes Ron feel very pitiful is that Dr. Fate is obviously a power bestowed by the ancient Babylonian gods, but he uses the power of the Egyptian gods. Celestial Master, Outsiders broke in and destroyed many of our facilities. Dottie knocked on the door at the moment and said. There was some anger on her face, obviously she had lost her temper before. Who? Ron frowned. Leviathan is in the territory of polar bears, and there are still people here to make trouble. Although the polar bear is almost dead now, this behemoth is about to disintegrate. Celestial Master, please see. Dottie turned on the monitor for Ron and saw the two men breaking into the base. They said they were looking for their daughter. Aren't they all orphans? Ron questioned Dottie with his eyes. He remembered that the children that the Red House found for training were basically orphans around 10 years old. Definitely, it's not surprising that something goes wrong now and then. Dottie at the moment also blushed and said, the people below made a mistake. What's the name of their daughter? Ron looked at the way the two men were dressed, and asked. One of the two was wearing a big red tights, holding a red shield in his hand, and the other was wearing a metal armor. Natasha Romanoff. Hearing the name, Ron immediately understood. The two turned out to be Black Widow Natasha Romanoff's parents. And the identities of these two, Ron has already figured it out. Guardians of Red and Iron Maiden. These two are both agents from Polar Bears, and the Red Guardian looks like a replica of the Captain of the United States in his outfit. In fact, this is the case, the Red Guardian is imitated by the Polar Bear after seeing the Super Soldier plan of the Lighthouse Country. So the dress is pretty much the same except for the color. Hood and shield. As for the Iron Maiden, she was the Polar Bear's agent, but in the end she chose to leave and became a mercenary and assassin. The metal armor on her body gives her strength and endurance beyond ordinary people. In the comics, the two were more or less involved with Natasha Romanoff. But in this world, they are Natasha Romanoff's parents. Well, drive them away. Ron thought for a moment and said. Dottie is definitely nodding, she's already gone to have someone do that. Leviathan is not a vegetarian either. With such a big organization, how could two people be able to make it happen? Therefore, even though these two people caused a lot of losses to Leviathan, they were still driven away by Leviathan. It is also definitely difficult to kill them. Unless Ron makes a move. But Ron wasn't interested in them either. But he didn't notice that Natasha Romanoff had already arrived at the Red House for training. Then Ron went to the Red House and saw 11-year-old Natasha Romanoff. Although Natasha Romanoff is still young, you can tell she is a beauty by looking at her appearance. Ron didn't go to see her either. He doesn't want to show up too much in front of outsiders yet. Otherwise, it will affect the later plan. This Natasha Romanoff, don't be so cruel to her. Ron said to Dottie, meaning, don't accept the final step like other agents. Although Ron took over the Red House, he didn't make much changes to it. For example, the most cruel step for a female agent. After all, Ron is not doing charity, and he doesn't want the agents cultivated by the Red House to fall down because of various feelings. So, Natasha Romanoff has the same privilege as Dottie. Dottie smiled, wondering what she was thinking. I will definitely deliver her to Master Celestial. Dottie said to Ron, you think too much. Ron thought so, but didn't say it. Misunderstandings are inexplicable, but Ron also left a hidden danger, that is, Natasha Romanoff is more likely to change jobs. Originally, she lost her fertility ability, but later she switched to shield. Let alone now. What's going on recently? Ron asked Dottie, and Dottie shook his head. Something happened before. For example, Howard Stark died in a car accident, and Tony Stark, who was only 20 years old, took over the Stark group. This is also very normal. Although Hydra did not have Bucky, there were other bases popping up. After all, their goal is to kill Howard, and it doesn't matter who the shot is. Therefore, Howard still passed away tragically. Ron has nothing to do with Howard, just met once. And it scared Howard half to death. Once Howard is dead, S.H.I.E.L.D. will naturally be infiltrated by Hydra. In addition, the disintegration of Polar Bear and then nothing else. Definitely, it's just the Earth. In the 9 realms, there was a surge of wind and clouds. Basically all races know that God King Odin wants to abdicate. As a result, Jotunheim's Frost Titan felt that the sky had cleared and the rain had stopped, and he was fine again. After all, Lof, the Frost Titan King, was defeated by Odin every time. Otherwise, Lof definitely has a way to lead the expansion of the Frost Titans. Therefore, Wang secretly started his own plan. The first thing to do is to prepare to take back your own treasure, the casket of ancient winters. However, this thing was stored by Odin into his own treasure house, and it is not so easy to get it back. And most importantly, how to get into Asgard without telling Heimdall. Naturally, Bifrost isn't the only way to Asgard. But other methods will be discovered by Heimdall. Heimdall's eyes can see anywhere in the 9 realms. Therefore, Frost Titan wants to get back his treasure, which can be called an impossible thing. After all, in Odin's treasury, there is also the destroyer armor that he no longer uses. Even if no one wears the destroyer armor, it still has a powerful ability to guard Odin's treasure house. Even if the Frost Titan sneaks in, it will be smashed into scum by the destroyer armor. It's a new century. The smiling Ancient One smiled at Ron. She had already contacted God King Odin and knew Ron was special. So I still have a lot of respect for Ron. What do you see? Ron asked, drinking a cup of tea from Ancient One. I can't see you, I can only see what would have happened in this world, but it must be different now. Ancient One shook his head. She only said half of it. Now every time she uses Eye of Agamotto to look into the future, the timeline becomes inexplicably confused. This means that many things will happen that she can't predict. But she had nothing to do with Ron. Considering Ron's powerful strength, Ancient One could only let him go. As long as he doesn't meet the 5 great gods, Ron must be an invincible existence in the universe, right? Ancient One secretly guessed. After all, Trinity Visandi had warned her. What she didn't know was that Ron's magical strength had already reached the level of other worlds' magic gods. God of spells. The magic power in his body is as vast and boundless as the sea of stars. Ancient One doubts that at the moment it's okay to let Ron go hard on Dormammu. I'm getting a little interested in the time gem, Ron said with a smile. Ancient One shook his head and laughed again. You already have space gem, it's better not to put 2 gems together. Ron looked at her with a half smile. It made Ancient One wonder what Ron meant. This person is simply a fan. But she sure wasn't going to take out the time gem. Agamotto Mage managed to find this, even though it was thrown by Odin. But this thing is something that has no owner. It was not thrown by Odin, or it belonged to Asgard. Do you have any good places to recommend? Ron drank the tea in his hand. It is grown by Kamar Taj himself and has a calming effect. Mage likes this kind of thing, which can make him enter the state of meditation quickly. New York. Ancient One thought for a while and said. Not going to Los Angeles? Asked Ron. I don't think you're interested in Stark. Ancient One smiled. That's true. As Ron said, his body disappeared directly in front of Ancient One. Ancient One breathed a sigh of relief. It's not easy to be the supreme mage. Strange grows up quickly. Although Ancient One doesn't like Strange very much, after all, he is very selfish and likes to make trouble. But now, Ancient One just wants to retire early. After she retires, the affairs of the earth will not belong to her. Goo, that's always been the idea. Otherwise, she clearly saw the future situation through the time gem, including the infinite gems of purple potato essence. If she wants to teach purple sweet potato Jing a lesson, there are countless opportunities. Including the battle in New York at that time, she was a melon-eating crowd. But she was indifferent and left all these to Strange. I have to say that it is supreme but still quite doggy. So, let's pay a 3-second silence for Strange, Dr. Strange. Different from Asgard's resplendent and retro atmosphere. New York is very modern, although that's how it was decades ago. On the contrary, the city of polar bears is completely incomparable with it. Row upon row of buildings, you can't even see the sky when you look up. There is a lot of traffic on the road. Although they are still relatively old-fashioned models, it feels the same to Ron as it has been more than 10 years later. At least it's not a classic car, is it? Until night time, the city is quite normal. It's not as messy as Ron imagined. After all, there are too many famous villains in this city. Ron didn't think it would be difficult to find a place for himself first. Although he is completely non-existent in the system of the lighthouse country. But as long as you have money, and he happened to be rich enough. World Black Card, it can be used in any world, and the balance is almost unlimited. This is something that Ron has signed in for who knows how many years, and it has never been of any use. After all, he had never had such worries in Asgard. Asgard has long since realized the so-called Great Harmony. Food, lodging and transportation will be arranged directly in all directions. Only the allocation of resources will be different. Just like Karl Nila's Nornheim, it was because Asgard didn't care and allocated too few resources, which led them to rebel. After all, Nornheim is not the center of Asgard, and it is normal that there are not so many resources allocated. But unfair distribution can easily lead to dissatisfaction among others. Asgard can't solve this problem either. Only now does Ron need to use the black card. In the Lighthouse country, the speed of capital opening is very fast. Although Lighthouse countries sometimes look at relationships are not as good as capital after all. So, Ron quickly acquired a new identity. Although this identity has not been checked, it is known that he appeared out of thin air. But at least on the bright side, they are no longer black households. Then, Ron found a place where no one was around, and threw the bumblebee out. The classic Camaro models, even now, are very novel. After all, it is only the beginning of the new century. Ron opened the car door and sat in directly. Unfortunately, because of his skin color, Supergiant could only hide in the base. Otherwise, it would be nice to take her around the modern society. The place where Supergiant stays is Asgard and the polar bear. However, although Asgard has high technology, it is limited by the population problem, and the buildings are very old-fashioned. Definitely, it also gives people a sense of immortality, looks very dignified and serious, and makes people lift their hearts unconsciously. And polar bears are even worse. Bad weather and not much modernization. We can only wait for Supergiant to take a look. Bumblebee. Ron patted the steering wheel and said, "Master, you finally let me out." The electronic sound of the bumblebee sounded. Qian Jiao Jiao. It was acquired by Ron about 3,000 years ago, but never had a chance to release it. After all, in Asgard, Ron doesn't need this kind of car. The bumblebee is running on the road on 4 wheels, and the rest are flying in the sky. It will directly explode its mentality. So, now the bumblebee comes in handy. Let's go to the rich district. Ron linked the bumblebee to the internet, so it had a map and knew where to go. "Okay, Master," Bumblebee said respectfully, not daring to turn around at all. Only then did Ron notice that its vocal cords were not damaged. This also saves him to fix it. Boom! With a roar, the bumblebee galloped at a speed that did not belong to this era. Ron is not afraid of being chased, and Bumblebee is also very happy. Therefore, even if there is a lot of traffic and there is a bit of traffic jam everywhere, the Hornets still reach the rich area at an extremely fast speed. In the Lighthouse country, the rich area and the poor area are completely two worlds. The biggest manifestation is the issue of law and order. Black people generally don't dare to run this way. Ron opened the way with money again, and soon bought a house that satisfied him, a small manor. He didn't even look at the price, and just swiped the black card. As long as he doesn't buy a few countries, this amount of money will not cause any currency problems at all. I don't know how many people looked at him with envy and awe. It's not that people in the Lighthouse country don't buy houses, but most people can't afford them. Therefore, most people will only rent a house, and feel so free. If you want to change places, change places. But in fact, as long as they have money, they would like to buy a house quickly. Therefore, those who can afford this kind of manor are naturally awed by everyone. This is a natural level gap. Boom! The bumblebee parked directly in the garage, waited until Ron came down, and it completed the transformation directly. Crack! With the sound of some mechanical rotation, the transformed bumblebee directly knelt on the ground on one knee. Owner, well, just stay here by yourself. Yes. Ron said. Bumblebee also walked out cautiously. Then looking at the door in front of it, it didn't know how to get in. I still want to go in and watch TV. As if knowing what it was thinking, Ron sent it directly into the hall. The estate is large and surrounded by lawns that need to be tended from time to time. People in the Lighthouse country like to plant some flowers and plants, and then take time to take care of them, but Ron doesn't like these. There were more than 10 rooms in the manor, and Ron found the master bedroom. although he doesn't need to rest at all right now. Glanced at the door of space. Another 20 years have passed, but the charging is still not complete. When night falls, this time is the most beautiful place in the city. There are lights of various colors everywhere, and the building is also full of colors, making it look no different from daytime. It does look beautiful, but in those places without lights, it is absolutely devouring darkness. The bumblebee stopped with a bang. Its sound caused many people nearby to look at it, and then saw a tall and handsome man walking down. Ron was holding a compass in his hand, Captain Jack's good thing, a compass that wouldn't guide. Ron used it when he was looking for Soul Gem, Jack. But now, at night, it turns on its own. So Ron let Bumblebee out with him. Ron followed the pointer all the way, wandering around and didn't know where he was. On the contrary, there are a few more spiritual guys in the rear who are integrated with the night. If it wasn't for the clothes on them and the whites of their eyes, Ron would have thought they would be invisible. Is this the racial ability of black people? Ron is also well informed. What race of skin color have you never seen? Blue-skinned, green-skinned, even in those years of wandering in the universe, I have seen sovereigns. Sovereigns are dressed in gold and look like walking gold. Ron has basically seen all kinds of colorful races. But, never hated it like this. No way, it may be that the racial ability of black people is too strong. However, there is no need for Ron to teach them a lesson now. Because a guy has arrived. Wearing tights and a mask. Daredevil, Mark Murdock. Being blind in both eyes should not affect his appearance. Hand over the money in your pocket. A few black guys gathered around. Even though Ron's height made them feel a little nervous, they endured it. They are so numerous that they are not afraid of defeating Ron alone. Ron didn't show any expression or movement. He thought of the popular science he had seen in his previous life. In the lighthouse country, if you want to go out at night, you'd better bring 20 knives with you. In this way, when you meet such black spiritual guys, just give them directly, and generally it will not embarrass you. And if you don't have money with you, then I'm sorry. Ron didn't expect that. The 10th time I came to the lighthouse country, I met him. Sure enough, it is free air and beautiful scenery. I suggest you look behind you. Ron said to them. Look behind what? Hurry up and hand over the money, don't blame us if you don't have money. I just watched you get off that brand new sports car, don't try to be stupid. Several black people chattered. Just like live rap, it annoyed Ron. And when they were making noise, the black guy felt that he was patted on the shoulder. Who shoots me? He opened it casually, and then looked back. A man in tights stands behind him. He couldn't help his legs trembling, but soon, he was knocked unconscious by a sap. It's this guy. The black people shouted suddenly, and then heard the sound of bang bang bang. But in just 10 seconds, all the blacks fell to the ground. Obviously, although Daredevil is not Batman, the ability to beat people to death is still the same. Batman never kills, he just beats you to death. Daredevil is similar to him. So, that's why Beacon Nation hates these vigilantes. If you become paralyzed, you still need to be raised by the Lighthouse Kingdom. Daredevil made a move that he thought was handsome, and then found that Ron was gone. Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. Although he can't see anything, his perception is amazing. After strengthening his 4 senses, he can analyze the surrounding environment in his brain by relying on hearing, etc. without eyes. So, he just barely felt Ron walking towards the wall and then disappearing. But anyway, he also knew that Ron was not normal. However, he couldn't see Ron at all, and naturally he didn't know who he was. No door bar. That's where the compass that doesn't know how to guide brings Ron. Ron could say that he didn't think about anything at the time, and the compass turned by itself. Definitely, at most I just thought about pretty girls. What he was thinking at the time was that he felt too boring and empty by himself, and he might need someone to accompany him. As the name suggests, a doorless bar means that it has no door to get in. So, the people who come here are basically mage from all over the world. Only mage can come here, because it has no door. Naturally, Daredevil Mark Murdock was dumbfounded, not knowing where Ron had gone. No matter how many times his perception power is stronger, he still can't find this place. There are quite a few people here, after all, mage from all over the world will basically come here. Later, Doctor Strange came here to get drunk, and the Scarlet Witch Wanda often came here for entertainment. As for why the compass points here, it's a ghost thing. Ron looked around the bar. It's almost the same as other bars. There are many seats, there are booths, and there is a large area in the middle. There are still quite a few bartenders, but there are no escort girls. Because all the people who come here are mage, and mage considers herself noble, so naturally she won't do this kind of work. The female mages who come here are basically capable. There are many mages in this world, and Kamartaj is obviously not the only one. Otherwise, it would be too easy to inherit the title of Supreme Mage. In the comics, if you want to become the Supreme Mage, you must become the strongest mage in the world, and you must compete constantly. Ron walked to the bar, and ordered a glass of wine casually. Payment is also in common currency. After all, mage is also human. Without money, nothing can be done. It can be said to be very real. But outside the Earth, the common currency in the universe is the credit value, which is almost the same as the interstellar currency. Ron found a casual seat and shook the wine glass in his hand. It is no different from the wine outside, but the difference lies in the materials used and a little magic power contained in it. First time, not long after Ron sat down, there was a fragrant wind blowing. Ron looked at the other person, with silver hair, fashionable clothes, and a fairly decent appearance. However, a dark breath. A bit like the breath on Ancient One before, the power of the dark dimension. Thinking in his heart, he smiled and said, "Yes, have a drink." The other party touched him with a wine glass, and then drank it down very generously. Naturally, Ron would not be stingy, and he called the bartender to bring the wine over after drinking. "My name is Kelly, are you from Asgard? This is the first time I've seen an Asgard come here," Kelly said casually, revealing Ron's identity. Ron smiled and said, "Just call me Ron." "Who are you, Dormammu?" Kelly didn't expect that Ron also recognized her origin. "Ahem, I just went to the dark dimension." Kelly coughed twice and said, "You can't tell a lie." Ron smiled and didn't continue the topic. Kelly, Dormammu's niece, is also named Kelly, and the dark power in her body also confirms this identity from the side. This made Ron look at Kelly twice more. It made Kelly feel uncomfortable and embarrassed. How could Ron be so straightforward? In the comics, Carrie is Doctor Strange's wife. But right now, Strange still doesn't know where he is. So, Ron labeled her handless. I have to say that when Ron came to New York, a modern metropolis, he felt younger. It's a change of mind. When he was a polar bear, he didn't feel that way. Polar bears always give him a sense of seriousness, so that he is still like a salted fish. But New York, a modern city, is different. The feasting immediately aroused Ron's youthful attitude. In fact, he wasn't old either. Whether it is according to the age of the Asgardians or the Kryptonians. Instead, he is still very young. Just a little bigger than Thor. Definitely, that's all. Ron wasn't going to take the initiative or anything. When the bartender came over with the wine, Ron and Kelly didn't speak, and just drank the wine one by one. Although Kelly has a special status, she is not as powerful as Dormammu. This is also normal. Before becoming the Lord of the Dark Dimension, Dormammu was also a powerful mage, necromancer. As his niece, Kelly only has a little bit of magic ability. And she wasn't as intrusive as Dormammu, so Ron didn't want to do anything to her. Carrie poured herself another glass and said, "Are you an Asgard from Common?" "Why do you say that?" asked Ron. "Because you don't have godhood on you," Kelly said very bluntly, "but you are also a powerful mage. Having mage ability doesn't necessarily mean having godhood." Ron shook his head. "But no godhood means no status," Kelly said playfully, winking at Ron. Ron stroked her silver hair and didn't say much. Oops, Kelly finally broke free from his clutches. Most people in Asgard don't have godhood, only Thor and Sif have godhood. Otherwise, how can it be different from others? Godhood has advantages and disadvantages. Godhood represents the ability and responsibility that one is born with. For example, Thor, his godhood allows him to control lightning. In the comics, he is an unlucky guy who loses his godhood every day, so he is often stunned by lightning. Well, Thor was stunned by lightning. What is the difference between being set on fire and being burned to death? This is what godhood does. In the past, Ron only thought that everyone didn't have godhood, which was different from other gods. He didn't realize he was wrong until he saw Sif. Sif, as the goddess of land and harvest, naturally has godhood. It's all Odin, the eccentric ghost. Your mana is very weak, how did you come here? Ron asked Kelly. Kelly's ability may be very high, but at the moment is really not strong. When Kelly heard this, she was immediately unhappy. You can come without godhood, but I can't. The two hurt each other. Ron, I have better spells than you. How strong can it be? Can it beat that fat man? Carrie said, pointing to a fat man on the bar who was drinking from a barrel. Ron found that the mana in him was surging. I don't know, I thought I traveled to the world of Roland and met the beer man in Legendary. Definitely, believe it or not, I'm stronger than Dormammu. Ron took a sip of his wine and said comfortably. Kelly immediately looked at him with contempt. She is Dormammu's niece, and it can be said that no one knows how strong Dormammu is better than her. Do not believe. Ron glanced at her. Kelly said cheerfully. Definitely don't believe it. If you can beat Dormammu, I can instantly kill Odin. Girl, you really can't do this. Does anyone really think that Odin is not strong? According to the state of Asgard people getting older and stronger, Odin of at the moment has reached the peak of his peak strength. As long as he can complete Odin's sleep, his strength won't matter much. Definitely, Dormammu is also strong. As a dimensional Mephisto, Dormammu has transcended time. So, Doctor Strange was able to torture him with the time gem later. Because for Dormammu, it has been repeated countless times. And with Doctor Strange, it's always the first time. How does this work? I'm going to annoy you to death. Therefore, this does not rule out that Ron is bragging, but with his strength, Dormammu can't kill him. Ron and Kelly bragged for a while, and it became more and more interesting. Believe it or not, Dormammu is not as powerful as I am. Ron said to Kelly. Carrie, Odin's spells are not as good as mine. Ron shook his head with a grin. It's daybreak. Kelly looked at the time and said. Although you can't see the outside from the doorless bar, you have time. Ron suddenly thought of something. Do you want to go back to last night? A smile formed on the corner of Ron's mouth. What? Kelly froze for a moment. Can you turn back time? Definitely. Ron nodded. I do not believe. Kelly immediately shook her head. Merlin's Book of Magic records the spell that can turn back time regression. Definitely, that depends on how powerful Ron's mana is, and has a limited range. 407. Ron himself had another method. Just like now, he cast a spell on Kelly, allowing her to escape for a short time. Otherwise, when time goes back, she will not know Ron anymore. Afterwards, Ron flew into the universe and began to reverse around the Earth directly. Shish. His speed increased until he could only see streaks of lightning orbiting the Earth. Then the Earth began to stop its rotation, and time began to slowly flow backwards. Kelly sitting at the bar had nothing to do. She didn't know why Ron was there, but she was still looking forward to it. Then, she saw people stop moving suddenly, and then slowly backed away. Hey, what are you doing? Kelly asked the people around her, but the others all had numb expressions, and it could even be said that they didn't even blink their eyes. Then they started to reverse what they had done before and did it again. Kelly suddenly felt a little terrified. Because except for her, everyone else is like this. She thought about what Ron said, but deep down she still couldn't believe it. Can Dormammu make it this far? She hurried to the outside world, and then saw that the already hazy sky began to gradually darken, and the sun also disappeared again. Kelly nearly fainted. She looked at the time, and it turned out that time was running backwards. It seems that a century has passed, and it seems that it is only a moment, and the time reversal is over. Ron flew down from the sky slowly, looking at Kelly. You actually did it. Although the spell on Kelly disappeared, she still remembered this memory. Others returned to normal and started their nightlife again. I said it, I can do it. Ron smiled slightly, making Carrie think he was a little handsome. A strong man with ability is the most handsome. Later, the reason why Carrie fell in love with Doctor Strange was because she saw Doctor Strange against Dormammu in the Dark Dimension, and thought he was very handsome. What Ron has done now has caused Kelly to fall too. Although she didn't express it, she still said, "Go for another drink." My pleasure. Ron laughed, and Carrie took his arm. It was the first time for Ron to do this, and it felt a little irritating. The time of the whole Earth was turned back by him for one day. He even felt that if the speed was faster, he would travel to other worlds. Definitely, just other parallel universes for Marvel. Instead of going to another world like the Gate of Space. No way. Who told Marvel to be indecisive when things happen? Quantum mechanics, not enough brains, parallel universes. The two of them seemed to be visiting Woman Bar for the first time. It also went through Daredevil and violently beat the Black Spirit guy. This place is deep in the New York neighborhood, and most people really don't come here. This time, the two of them didn't drink all night, but had 2 casual drinks, and then followed Ron to the Bumblebee. Is this a living body? Kelly, who didn't care much at first, asked in surprise. Cars are basically useless for Mage except to look cool. So she didn't care about the appearance of the Bumblebee before. But when she got in the car, she realized that something was wrong. Because in her induction, the Bumblebee has life signs. Bumblebee, say hello to Carrie. Ron said. The voice of the Bumblebee sounded immediately, hello, ma'am. Listening to this electronic sound, Kelly was infinitely curious. She had not seen such a life. Dormammu had devoured so many dimensions, but she had never seen anything so strange. Your name is Bumblebee. Where are you from? Kelly asked immediately. I'm an Autobot, from Cybertron. Bumblebee replied immediately. Cybertron. Hearing the name, Kelly looked at Ron. Ron immediately said, this universe is too big, there are many galaxies you don't know. Kelly nodded in agreement. Is this what bumblebees look like? Definitely not, Ron said, looking out to a silver and white Ferrari sports car speeding past. Bumblebee, become like that. Yes, master. As Bumblebee said, he suddenly drifted in place, and then chased after the silver-white sports car just now. Boom! The sound of the Bumblebee roared, directly following the car and rushing past. Is that a Camaro? Can a Camaro outrun a Ferrari? Are you kidding me? The people next to him screamed, and then watched the Camaro gradually go away. Not long after, Bumblebee completed the shapeshifting directly, and the whole appearance from the inside to the outside of the car became the same as the sports car just now. Kelly immediately screamed. To put it bluntly, her heart is still very young. Kelly found Ron ignoring her, and found him staring out the car window. What are you looking at? Ron came back to his senses and said, I thought it was a beautiful scenery that belonged exclusively to Luo Shengdu. Luo Shengdu. Kelly had obviously never heard the name. Well, a beautiful place. Ron smiled as he watched the call girl flashing past the car window. He thought it was a specialty of Luo Shengdu, but he didn't expect the city of New York to have it too. When he came here on the Hornet a while ago, he didn't even see this scenery. It seems that the time is too early. After all, it starts late at night when people want to open. If it is too early, it will affect the appearance of the city. After understanding these principles, Ron also felt amused by the free atmosphere. Sure enough, it's very free. They are either homeless or these guys on the street. There are also those spirited guys, wearing a hat and staring at you at all times. No wonder people dare not come out at night. It's free. Kelly half understood, feeling that Ron was thinking something bad. I've only heard of Los Angeles. Carrie pursed her lips and Ron immediately leaned her head towards her. Never mind that, tonight is going to be a wonderful night. The Bumblebee quickly took the owner back home, because it had a premonition of what was going to happen. Poor Autobot. Early in the morning, Kelly woke up to find that Ron was gone. She searched for a while with mental strength, only to find that Ron was meditating. Are you awake? Do you want to eat? Ron found her awake and asked too. Definitely. Kelly's strength is not enough to not eat anything. Even Ancient One seems to be having a hard time doing this. I thought you were gone, just like that famous playboy Tony Stark. Kelly laughed casually, and sat down beside Ron. Tony Stark can be called the representative of unplugging the ruthless, waking up the next day completely ignoring people. You still know this guy? Ron twitched the corner of his mouth. In the human world, can you not know this guy? Kelly looked at him with a half smile. You don't doubt what I have with him, do you? Definitely not. Ron shook his head. Carrie was first blood. That's good. Lively Carrie took his arm. Her physical fitness is very strong, and at the moment didn't feel any discomfort at all. Ordinary bodies can't bear Ron's strength. After breakfast, Ron also ate a little casually. The two continued to go out to play. Anyway, Ron at the moment has nothing to do. Tony Stark, that playboy at the moment, is getting older, but he doesn't have any thoughts of turning back. He hasn't pretended to be Iron Man in front of the media yet. There was a sudden jolt from the galloping Bumblebee, which almost caused problems for both Ron and Kelly. Bumblebee, Ron asked quickly. Master, I'm sorry, I don't know which wicked person lost a sticky thing. The sound of the Bumblebee sounded immediately, and then drove to the destination, an unmanned beach. Kelly wants to bask in the sun, which is exactly what Ron wants. He likes basking in the sun best. Arriving at the location, the Bumblebee started shapeshifting straight away, and found a mass of goo in front of it. Cobweb. Ron looked at the cobweb that Bumblebee had carefully dug out, and fell silent. This looks like the cobweb that was artificially sprayed out. Those who have this kind of thing are creatures that rely on mutations like Spider-Man. The question is Peter Parker still a schoolboy? A building in the heart of New York that looks just like the common office building. Most of the people here have serious faces, and the technology inside seems to be decades ahead of the outside. Boom boom boom. On the top floor of the building, the sound of high-heeled shoes echoed throughout the passage, sounding deserted. And this woman didn't panic at all. She wore a unique uniform, had short hair, and had a cold demeanor. She came to the door marked the chief, and knocked on the door. Come in, Agent Teal. Not long after, a deep voice came from inside. Obviously, the other party has watched the surveillance. What a cautious guy. Although she is used to Nick Fury's approach, Maria Hill still sighed in her heart. Perhaps it is precisely because of this kind of caution that he can become the king of agents from a small agent. Hill agent opened the door gently. Nick Fury didn't like making loud noises. After a few steps to the desk, she only saw Nick Fury turn around with his back leaning on the chair with his head bare. One eye is patched and the other stares at her. It was as if he had just noticed her. Agent Hill knew he did it on purpose, and waited for him to speak. Is there a problem? Nick Fury asked, propping himself up on one hand. Our satellite captured an interesting scene last night. Hill agent directly gave him the tablet in his hand. If it weren't for New York, maybe we wouldn't have seen it yet. Nick Fury's expression didn't change at all, and he didn't seem to have the slightest interest in what Hill agent said. He took the tablet and watched the video inside. It's the scene where Bumblebee catches up to the silver-white Ferrari and completes the transformation in the blink of an eye after leaving. As S.H.I.E.L.D. director, he didn't ask stupid questions like whether it was a special effect or not. Since it was put in front of him, it was the truth. What technology is this? He asked slowly. I don't know, but I can confirm that it should not be Earth's technology. Maria Hill said. At the moment she is not yet the deputy director of S.H.I.E.L.D., but the rank is already very high. It's not far from Nick Fury promoting her. Who is the owner? Nick Fury was silent for a moment. Agent Hill stretched out his hand to stroke him. He clearly knew how to do it, but he wanted to show his authority in this way. Ron's message suddenly appeared on the screen. But there is only one name, and under the influence of banknote ability, I didn't even take a photo. The others are also filled in by Ron. As for the establishment time, it is only a day or two. Except for name, everything else is fake. Hill agent said. Occupation, car repairman, and nationality, Ron even filled in an Andorra. That country with a population of less than 80,000, if you go to the Celestial Dynasty, you will find a lot of people from it. Ron also remembered the name and filled it in casually. As for the photo, our satellite has also taken one. With another swipe, a not-so-clear picture appeared. It was the picture of Ron coming home with Carrie on his arm. Although the picture quality is poor, Nick Fury is still staring at the screen tightly. He seems to have seen this face. He enlarged the picture infinitely, and the resolution did not decrease much. S.H.I.E.L.D. technology still exists. Have you seen him? Maria Hill turned her head sideways and asked a question. Nick Fury looked as usual, and said without any change, no. Keep this secret, and prepare the plane for me. Hearing this, Agent Hill immediately had no time to analyze Fury's thoughts. Can only hurry to do things. But she knew that things were definitely not that simple. Otherwise Nick Fury wouldn't have said so much in one breath. Soon, Nick Fury took the prepared plane to Washington, D.C. Then he dismissed all the agents, and the dignified S.H.I.E.L.D. director rummaged through things by himself. Fortunately, all the high-level items are stored here, and ordinary people can't get here at all. Not long after, he found a tall photo frame. It is the painting that has been stored for nearly 1,000 years in some unknown way. Although the paper of at the moment is yellowed and slightly faded, Nick Fury's powerful memory ability still allows the two to match. Sure enough, the men all looked exactly the same, but the people around them had changed. Definitely, the appearance does not make him suspicious, mainly because of the unknown technology. Nick Fury looked down and saw the Norwegian writing. Through translation, he quickly understood the meaning. Goddess of War Sif, unknown god. Elliot Randolph. He is neither from Nebula M78, nor is he the melee mage who only knows how to cast light. He's just an expert professor who loves and studies Norse mythology. Definitely, he also has an unknown identity. He is from Asgard. He was also conscripted by Asgard and experienced the Nine Realms War. Later, after following Odin to the Earth, he became a deserter directly. At the moment he was found by S.H.I.E.L.D. Because he is very familiar with Norse mythology, which is the so-called myth of the gods of the North. He didn't know what kind of organization this Homeland Security Bureau was with a name so long that he couldn't even remember it. But he didn't resist either, because he knew not to expose himself. Along the way, he followed a woman to the top floor and met the so-called chief. Director, someone brought it. Hill agent said. After letting Elliot go in, he went in himself and then closed the door. Professor Elliot, please sit down, this is Nick Fury. Nick Fury looked at him with a serious face, while Elliot looked calm. I don't know why you called me here, Elliot asked after sitting down. Nick Fury sat down immediately, while the female agent stood behind him. We came to you to know something. Nick Fury folded his hands in front of him, one eye staring into his. Gives Elliot a sense of facing Odin. It's the moment when Odin was blinded in one eye. That scene made a deep impression on him, because he took advantage of that moment to escape. Elliot was a little nervous, then raised his hand to beckon Nick Fury to say. You have a lot of research on Norse mythology. God King Odin, Thor, Dodan, Goddess Sif. Nick Fury spoke slowly, making Elliot almost tremble. He thought he had been spotted. He controlled his tone and said, Indeed, I have studied Norse mythology for a long time. Nick Fury nodded, and then said, Then can you tell me some stories about the goddess of war Sif? I don't know much about Norse mythology, does she have a close male, god? Elliot was silent for a while and said, In mythology, she is the goddess of land and harvest. She has excellent ability and strength, almost comparable to Valkyrie in Legendary, so she was named the goddess of war. As for who you are close to, it's not clear, maybe it's not mentioned in the myth. Nick Fury was silent, then gave Hill a look. Agent Hill nodded, and then took out the things. A tablet and a painting. Nick Fury reached out to take it, and handed it to Professor Elliot. Professor, do you know him? Elliot took a look, without any change in expression. The faces on the tablet are a little familiar and a little unfamiliar. Then look at that painting. His hand paused, but Nick Fury noticed it keenly. Professor, do you know what god he is? The Agent King asked directly and tentatively. Impossible, Elliot simply exclaimed. These gods really exist. How can you be sure that this painting is real? Nick Fury asked, squinting his one eye. Forehead. Elliot thought for a while and said, You probably wouldn't give me a fake. Although he was a little surprised in his heart, he didn't show it. He was surprised, how could the goddess Sif and this Ron be drawn? And look at her holding something in her hand. Elliot obviously knew Ron. After all, he lived in Asgard for thousands of years, and later Ron became a little popular because of Brunhild's Valkyrie. Everyone knows that Brunhild was hanging out with him before he became Valkyrie. Nick Fury nodded. I hope the professor will go back and continue to study Norse mythology. I think I will have a lot of questions to ask you. Definitely. After Elliot was sent away, Nick Fury said to Hill, My gut tells me there's something wrong with him. Agent Hill nodded immediately, and then also looked at the painting. Do you need to contact him? Don't act rashly. Fury refused her, and when Agent Hill left, he immediately took out a document from the drawer. After thinking about it, he wrote a few words, Avengers Plan, on the document. If all these myths are true, then this Earth is obviously not as simple as he imagined. At the moment, an orange cat dangled past his eyes. Nick Fury, who looked calm, suddenly felt his eyes hurt. Ron, who was leisurely basking in the sun in his small manor, didn't know that he was discovered by S.H.I.E.L.D. And also because of the bumblebee. But he doesn't care. If he doesn't want others to find out, don't say anything else, just wear a pair of Superman glasses, who can recognize him. Therefore, he never thought about whether he would be discovered. Ron is in a very extraordinary state of mind right now. Although he will not be like Thor, find someone and say that he is the glory of the god of the north. But I don't care about being discovered by others. Because it would make others fear him, and he didn't want to be provoked by the commons. Honey, are you basking in the sun again? Kelly came over with a glass of wine, leaned on him and said. Yes, I like to bask in the sun. Ron took it and took a sip, then pressed on Kelly. Kelly blocked the sun for a while. Her skin was very fair, and it was the kind that couldn't be tanned. After all, she is not the same as the common people. Although Dormammu didn't teach her powerful magic, he did strengthening to her. Teach me a little magic. Kelly turned around suddenly and said. Okay. Money. Ron didn't refuse, his magic attainments were very high. And Kelly's ability is very good, even if she doesn't speak, Ron will teach her. Although she is Dormammu's niece. But Carrie and Dormammu are totally different. Perhaps it was precisely because Dormammu saw Kelly's 25 boy attribute that he didn't teach Kelly too much magic knowledge. For example, it is not the first time that Kelly has come to Earth this time. Otherwise, it would be impossible to know Woman Bar. And her purpose of coming to Earth is that Dormammu asked her to find a way to allow Dormammu's dark dimension to invade Earth. But Kelly didn't do anything. This made Dormammu so annoyed with her that he later exiled Carrie. Therefore, it is necessary for Kelly to improve her strength. Kelly kissed the corner of his mouth and said, That's great, I don't want to go to the dark dimension, there is nothing there, and I can't even hear the sound away from the residential area. Oh, can you tell me about the dark dimension? Ron hadn't been to the dark dimension yet, so he asked directly. There's nothing good there. Kelly said something disdainful, but she still told Ron, It's dark and nothingness, I'm going to collapse after staying there for a long time. And the residents of the dark dimension are so ugly. There are still original residents? Ron asked immediately. Yes, there were inhabitants there before he took over the dark dimension and became the Dimension Mephisto. But after he took control of the dark dimension, he exiled more than half of those residents. Kelly nodded. Dimension Mephisto is very powerful, otherwise it would originally be Dormammu of the powerful mage, there is no need to control the dark dimension. And he gave up his body for the sake of his strength. So there was the look that Doctor Strange saw. There is no fixed form, and the power of the Dimension Mephisto can make Dormammu grow and shrink infinitely. Definitely, what made Dormammu unable to resist ability the most was pure dark energy. Pure dark energy can be transformed at will. Ancient One also used it to maintain its own life. Otherwise, she would have passed away like the 140th Division of Agamotto. Isn't there anything interesting to do? Ron asked, patting Carrie, who opened his hand casually. She tilted her head and thought for a while. Yes, every once in a while, they will hold a meeting between the Mephisto dimensions. Reunion. Yeah, all of them want to be the Devil King, but none of these demons will obey anyone. Kelly said and laughed. What I remember most is a guy named Faith, who is always eccentric, and often sows discord. Ron was speechless, also not sure what the so-called dimensional Mephisto gatherings look like. Sounds like fun. Moto is the Devil King in Hell in Legendary, and the spirit of vengeance in his hand can make people become Ghost Rider. The guy who's covered in hellfire and calls you guilty when he sees someone. After Ron and Kelly finished chatting cheerfully, they began to teach Kelly magic. After some questioning, Ron confirmed that Carrie only has simple common sense of magic. Are you sure Dormammu is your dear uncle? Ron asked strangely. Kelly gave him a blank look. She didn't like this name very much, and even Ninja didn't know Dormammu herself. Because Dormammu looked like a monster to her. Anyone who has an uncle who gave up his human body to become a monster for the sake of great strength will not like it. His personality is completely different. He has become manic and dark. I don't want to see him. Therefore, Kelly said so. This is why she often leaves the dark dimension. No one can bear the presence of Dormammu. What's more, he also made himself impersonal. Ron began to teach her some basic magic knowledge, and found that Kelly could quickly master it. Dormammu just didn't let her practice magic very deeply. Therefore, Kelly's magic attainments began to improve rapidly. Ron's magic system is quite different from that of this world. Magic in the Marvel world generally requires a high price, and what Ron hates the most is this kind of magic system. In his view, magic is like the force of the original force, which belongs to him and is cultivated by himself. Like the magic system in the Marvel world, it is simply heresy. Use your own power, why pay the price? And even if it's borrowed power, it can't be used too much at once, otherwise the whole person will collapse. So, the disadvantages are too great. Ron was also shifting Klee's understanding of magic. At least his own mana is cultivated by himself, and he doesn't have to pay any price. If there's a price to pay, it's time spent. Not as fast-paced as Kamar Taj's magic. A genius CHFG like Doctor Strange can use the teleportation spell after throwing it in the snow to feel it. Therefore, the improvement of Kelly's strength is not as fast as in the comics. She stayed by Ron's side by herself, slowly building up her mana. Ron surveyed his surroundings. The last time I went out with Kelly, Bumblebee was suddenly attacked by the cobweb. Now it seems that it was not an intentional attack, but that the other party accidentally used the Bumblebee. Because Ron didn't notice anyone approaching and asking. Supervision and super hearing are no joke, he can even see the textures on satellites in the universe. As for super hearing, it also allowed him to hear some common things. For example, Tony Stark, who came to New York from Los Angeles for business, is in the villa not far away. The Stark group has become very large through his development. On the east coast and west coast of the Lighthouse country, there are its buildings. For example, during the New York War, the place Loki was looking for was the Stark building. Because it is the highest. Normally, though, Tony would still be in Los Angeles. Because there are too many dreamers there. Los Angeles is undoubtedly a place full of feasting and debauchery, romantic and beauties, countless people dream of soaring to the sky, and countless girls go to Los Angeles to find the so-called dream of the United States. This kind of place is undoubtedly very suitable for Dude Tony. I don't know how many girls have been bullied by him. But even when he arrived in New York, he was busy with female reporters. Ron was using his super hearing and heard him and Obadiah arguing on the phone. Looks like it won't be long before Iron Man is born. Definitely, this has nothing to do with Ron either. He doesn't care when Tony becomes Iron Man, he only cares when Thor, the fool, is left behind. Or will it still be dropped? What if Odin is determined to let him succeed? Ron thought about it, and felt that the possibility was very small. Basically impossibly small. Odin, you don't think he's too much of a threat, do you? If you really want to talk about threats, Karl Neela is much more than his threats. After all, Karl Neela is also the Queen of Norn, not only has a name, but also a territory. Although Nornheim accepted Asgard's resources, he did not listen to Asgard's orders. Although Ron has a name, he has no power or territory. Even Brynhild and Sif, who were related to him, were sidelined. After analyzing it for a while, Ron suddenly felt that there was nothing wrong with him. Night fell. Kelly finished her practice. Honey, are you going out for a drink? Kelly teased Ron. Definitely. Ron lifted his arm, and Carrie pulled it back. At the moment she put on a red gown, plus a head of silver hair, sparkling. Coupled with the maturity of being a new wife, it has a special charm. Chapter 71. Moreover, Kelly's height is not low. With a full height of 1.73 meters and high heels, he doesn't look like a birdie even around Ron. The Bumblebee was very discerning, and when it saw that the hostess and hostess were about to go out, it immediately roared over. Bumblebee, go. After the two sat on it, the Hornet directly ejected and started. At the moment the Bumblebee becomes the Camaro model again. Nothing else, because Ron was more used to the Bumblebee look. Then Ron went straight to the sky. He is communicating with Supergiant using psychic power. Although Kelly sensed something, it wasn't obvious. Supergiant doesn't like to use communication tools, and feels that she will be monitored by others, so her communication with Ron has always been mental power. This is also due to the fact that both of them are very strong, and Supergiant's ability is just related to this aspect. Just like Professor X, you can directly speak to the depths of others. Scared also have to scare you. Toot. Soon, the sound of Ridu's horn drew his attention back. Turning his head, he saw a red sports car parked next to them, waiting for the red light together, and the playboy inside was looking at them provocatively. Tony Stark. After a little thought, Ron knew what was going on. Probably the Hornet overtook him directly, and it was very fast. Therefore, after going to bed, this young child has a comparative mind. Rolling down the car window, Ron said, "Your father wouldn't even dare to look at me like that." Then he shook his head and said to Bumblebee, "Just leave him alone." "Yes, master." The Hornet's electronic sound sounded, and then the entire rear tires began to rub against the ground crazily, quickly bringing up puffs of dust. If it wasn't for the Bumblebee, Ron would really be afraid of a flat tire. Seeing this situation, Tony hurriedly started to prepare. Boom. As the red light turned green, the Hornet ejected and rushed out. Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. Tony was going to do a good comparison, but soon found that the shadow of the Bumblebee was gone. Nima, is this a Camaro? Tony, who was still proud of his driving skills, instantly felt the huge amounts of gap. Definitely, and what Ron said made him angry too. What makes your father dare not look at me like this? Does he know his father? How can it be? Ron didn't even look his age. But also because of this, Tony has a little interest in Ron. But quickly forgotten. This is normal, he is a millionaire, the richest man, even if he has a little interest in others, he will quickly forget about it. Unless, that person has something for him to remember. The speed of the Bumblebee is really unbelievable, after all, it is originally a kind of life. It looks like a Camaro, but it's actually a Cybertronian. Does this count as pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger? The Bumblebee came to the depths of the city at an extremely fast speed. This kind of place is generally not visited by anyone, and it is more dangerous than Hell's Kitchen. Because although there are many gangsters in Hell's Kitchen, they all have their own territory. As long as you have money with you, and you honestly hand over the money in the face of robbery, the gangsters will generally not do anything to you. Otherwise, Hell's Kitchen would have been messed up long ago, and no one would dare to survive there. But here is different, here is the real depth of the city, generally even people don't want to come to this kind of place. Once you encounter a robber, you can't even find someone to ask for help. Let you go or not, it depends entirely on the other party's meaning. Therefore, some accidents often happen here. It can be said that the law and order of the Lighthouse country is really not good. You can't see anything during the day, but at night, all the ghosts and monsters come out. Don't go out at night. This sentence is very suitable for the Lighthouse country. Ron got out of the car with his arms around Kelly, who was wearing gorgeous clothes, and there was no one around. It's good to choose this kind of place without a door bar, so you won't be seen. Best of all, Mage isn't afraid of these black spirit guys either. Black people have racial ability, Mage has magic. There were no waves this time, and there was no Daredevil. After all, he is very busy. Hell's Kitchen is enough for him to play, and he doesn't come out to play very often. So, while Daredevil is curious about Ron's inexplicable disappearance. But after searching for a reason and not finding the reason, he left. Moreover, the doorless bar does not have a fixed location. So it is impossible to see every mage enter and exit from one place. No door bar is still hot. Although the mages have spells that allow them to refill their cups indefinitely. But drinking this kind of thing, drinking alone and drinking with a group of people are completely different feelings. One person is called drinking, but a group of people is really drinking. Therefore, mages are very keen to come here. Ron and Kelly found a place where no one was there. People they don't know don't care about them. Although all mages basically know each other, after all, mages on Earth can say as much or as little as possible. Carrie swigged a drink, then gave Ron a defiant look. Ron chuckled. When it comes to drinking, no one can compare to him. So soon, Kelly was drunk. There are not many drunks in the doorless bar. Not all mage can drink, so they will still be drunk. Ron was about to leave here with Kelly in his arms. He threw a banknote at random on the stage of the woman dancing in the middle, and left gracefully. Honestly, nothing interesting. If it wasn't for Kelly, Ron really didn't want to come. Because the doorless bar is no different from other bars except that the people who come here are mage. The style is similar, and there are dancers, but there are very few. Kelly's weight was nothing to Ron, who put her in the passenger seat, her arms still wrapped tightly around his neck. Carrie. Ron dangled in front of her eyes without moving. This girl has a bit of a bad drink capacity. Ron managed to get Kelly's hand off, and close the car door. Then, he saw a figure flying over his head. It's not flying by. Ron saw the other party use web shooters, drifting past like a Spider-Man. This intrigued Ron. Bumblebee, send Carrie back. Remember, don't get caught. Ron said to Bumblebee, and Bumblebee immediately responded by dazzing the headlights twice. After all, this can be regarded as unmanned driving. It will still be a little troublesome if it is discovered. The Bumblebee left directly with a bang, and changed the license plate casually, and now it's not even afraid of surveillance. The Camaro in New York does not know how many there are, and it is impossible to find it. Ron watched the Bumblebee leave, and then directly chased after the figure who had just left. Not to mention that the other party hasn't left him too far. Even if the other party flies to the sun, Ron can still see it, and he can catch up to 6. The tights between the black baixiong, the upper body is almost white, and the bottom is all black. When wearing a mask, he also wears a white hood. The tights have spider-like checks on the arms and green high heels on the feet. Ron took a closer look and confirmed the other party's identity. Spider-Gwen, also known as Ghost Spider-Man. Her name is Gwen Stacy, which is why the name Spider-Gwen came about. Her ability is no different from Spider-Man. There is a good saying. The rich rely on technology, and the poor rely on mutation. Spider-Man is the representative of mutation. The power and constitution beyond ordinary people, and the so-called spider telepathy and so on. Make Spider-Man a good neighbor, good friend. After knowing the other party's identity and not targeting him, Ron has no interest. 063. Spider-Man's ability is okay, but it's useless. Moreover, Spider-Man's greatest ability is actually the mouth escape technique. Using the speed of speaking like a machine gun, you can fool the enemy. On this point, only Deadpool can compare with him. However, Spider-Gwen does not have this kind of ability. She is not very good at speaking. Just as Ron was about to leave, he saw what Spider-Gwen was up to. 3 people appeared on the roof in front of them, standing in a triangular position. Spider-Gwen immediately hid aside. One of the 3 whom Ron has seen is Daredevil. The other is a woman, dressed as a ninja, with a short 3-pronged thorn in her hand. The other one is Bullseye. Bullseye's outfit is very recognizable. Erica, you really betrayed God. Bullseye said coldly, as if he had caught evidence. It turned out that it was Erica who had come to see Daredevil, and was spotted by Bullseye who had been staring at her. Bullseye has long been unhappy with Erica. Erica used to be a ninja assassin of the hand. When she came to New York, she was immediately taken by the underground emperor Jin Bin and replaced Bullseye. Bullseye lost his position as the #1 hitman and wanted to kill Erica. So, there is this scene. Erica and Daredevil looked at each other. Daredevil can't see her, but he can sense her. Bullseye didn't say much afterward, and when he found the handle, he did it directly. Call out. A flying darts flew directly towards Erica, and at the same time turned around and threw one towards Daredevil. 1 against 2. But since Daredevil and Erica are both melee fighters and have no means of long-distance attack, they are directly suppressed by Bullseye alone. Erica's strength is not weak, and she quickly avoids the flying darts of the Bullseye. But her senses were not as good as Daredevil after all, and she was quickly hit by a dart by Bullseye. Bah! Snort. Erica snorted coldly, and the flying darts sank directly into her body, making her face instantly pale. Erica! Daredevil yelled, and rushed towards Bullseye desperately. Daredevil dodged all the flying darts Bullseye threw at Daredevil. Bullseye turned and ran, like flying a kite, turning and attacking non-stop. Daredevil had to slow down because he wanted to dodge. Clang! At this moment, Erica directly threw the weapon in her hand, just in front of Bullseye's escape path. Court death. Bullseye saw that Erica had no weapon, and was unable to block his hidden weapon, so he continued to attack Erica. His only goal is to kill Erica. Daredevil didn't take him seriously at all. Erica jumped up and danced in the air like a butterfly. Her body is so flexible that Ron, who was watching the battle, couldn't help but take a second look. But alas, the target speakers are too dense, she can't dodge at all. Shish. Hearing only a few sounds of hidden weapons piercing into the flesh, Ron couldn't stand it anymore. It's so miserable. Erica couldn't even scream and fell to the ground. What's even more tragic is that Bullseye came over and kicked him directly under the roof of the building. This is a real man. Ron felt that Jinfu was going to hand over the title of Best Woman Hitter to Bullseye. Bullseye is really merciless. Erica, Daredevil roared again, stood on the top of the building and looked down, and found that Erica's body kept falling. His anger made him explode with greater strength and speed, and he caught up with Bullseye and hit him hard. Bullseye underestimated Daredevil. The main reason is that he killed his girlfriend in front of Daredevil. Can this be tolerated? Therefore, Bullseye immediately hit the street, and he was beaten by close combat at a distance, and the result was naturally not much better. Daredevil threw Bullseye downstairs as well. But in fact, Erica is not dead at all. Spider-Gwen, who had been watching for a long time, finally made a move. Like a diver, she jumped directly from the roof of the building in a very standard posture. With his head on the ground, the speed of the whole person dropped rapidly. And she also used the cobweb to borrow some speed, caught up with Erica, then hugged Erica, and quickly used the cobweb to pull herself up. The whole movement is smooth, which also prevents Erica from falling to pieces. After Daredevil dropped Bullseye, she picked Erica up. Go and take her to heal, Spider-Gwen said. Her voice is very clear, it sounds like a high school student. Combined with her height, it is about 1.6 meters. If it's with Ron, it's the cutest height difference. After speaking, Spider-Gwen drifted away without giving Daredevil a chance to speak. Daredevil didn't have time to thank him, he hugged Erica's bloody body and ran away. Bullseye's strength was not small, and all the hidden weapons pierced Erica's body. I don't know the extent of the injury. If any organ is directly punctured, it will be over. As for Ron, watched a fight and had no idea. Too weak, not at the same level as him at all. He is more interested in Spider-Gwen. It's definitely not because of the difference between the other party's voice and the cutest height. Instead, Ron thought of a fun one. Soon, Ron took out a black suit from the system space. Batman armor. Batman, Bruce Wayne's favorite work, with various functions and small props. This is Ron's first monthly sign. But except after trying it on at the beginning, Ron has been suppressing the bottom box. This thing is really useless to him. The only use is to play handsome. If nothing else, this set is really cool. Ron had found out why Batman was being pursued by so many women. Rich, handsome, Bat armor is even more handsome and spent a lot of money. Knowing his true identity, can a woman stop chasing him? The night has reached the deepest moment. Even if the moon is extremely bright, it still can't bring much light to this dark world. Countless tall buildings even block the moon's figure. On the tallest building nearby, the vigorous figure of Spider-Gwen came to it. As if her feet were glued to the window, she ran up diagonally. Hey, Gwen. After Gwen came up, someone immediately called her famous minister. Jessica, Gwen yelled. The other party wears the same Spider-Man costume as her, except that Jessica wears a black red tights and only has an eye patch instead of a mask like Gwen. This is Jessica Drew, the Spider-Woman, who was originally a man whose sun never sets, but was brainwashed by Hydra. Now finally escaped Hydra and became Spider-Woman. No one expected that there were actually two Spider-Women in New York. How about it? I encountered a little situation on the road. It seems that Daredevil and Jin and that fat man. Jin is not fat, it's all muscle, it hurts to beat someone. Jessica showed a look of reminiscence, as if her delicate body had been beaten by Jin Bing. Gwen also nodded, she was just joking. Jin doesn't look like a big guy, but he's actually full of muscles, which has nothing to do with being fat. Then let's go back. Gwen said the two appeared to be living together. Jessica nodded immediately, but after she turned around, she stopped. Who are you? She drank it low. Then Jessica and Gwen, like frightened animals, put their hands on the ground with one hand, and put the other hand behind them, making vigilant movements. And following their gazes, a tall figure wearing black armor appeared in front of them. This figure appeared on the electric box, with one foot raised and stepped on the stage, looking sideways at them. This set of black armor has a metallic texture, but it can also bring out Ron's figure, with his 8-pack abs faintly visible. Black's cloak fluttered with the high wind, and under the mask that only covered half of his face, his eyes looked indifferent and detached. His figure just blocked the bright moonlight, and the shadow spread on the roof of the building looked like a huge amounts of bat. At the moment, the only thing missing is the bat light. Who are you? Gwen also looked at Ron with apprehension. Their spider telepathy had no warning. To rule out the possibility of failure, it is that Ron has no idea to deal with them. Thinking of this, Gwen and Jessica looked at each other. But that doesn't mean they've let their guard down. A low and powerful voice sounded. Love Batterman. Listening to the voice, I can't tell who Ron is at all. This guy Bruce Wayne made a voice changer to change his voice. People can hear Batman's voice and fear. Batman. Gwen and Jessica looked again. The two stood up from the ground. This kind of person is generally not an unknown person. Why haven't I heard of it before? What do you want us to do? Gwen asked. It didn't look like Ron was looking for trouble. Ron stood on it without moving, just straightened himself up. For what you guys did in New York. His deep voice sounded again. We did a good job. Gwen immediately replied unconvinced. There is no need for what you do here, your presence will only make this city more chaotic. Ron imitated Batman's thinking and began to make things up. Anyway, just keep fooling around and it's over. Why? Jessica also frowned and said in a deep voice. This dress of hers can't hide her characteristics at all. Once met on the road, Ron can recognize her at a glance. Because the features of her lips are too obvious. You don't know what to do, you shouldn't kill people. Ron added, Batman never kills. Just beat people to pieces. But that didn't stop him from coming out to fool the two of them. Gwen and Jessica immediately fell silent. Their strength is so great that common people can't bear it at all, even if they are restrained. Often a random blow can kill someone. At least hemiplegia. It's no different from Batman's approach. Okay, let's do our best. Gwen had to say. By the way, are you new to New York? Do you want to form a team? Ron was a little surprised by Gwen's out-of-the-box thinking. Isn't it a heavy topic? Then talk about Batman's life insights. Ron is a good teacher. I've been here for a long time, it's just that I don't need to take action. Confronting violence with violence is not the best way. Ron looked at Gwen and said. Gwen seemed a little disapproving, but Ron gave her the feeling of confronting a schoolteacher, so she didn't rebut. She is indeed still a high school student, and her fighting consciousness was taught by Jessica. I saw what you did just now, and it's not bad. Ron said something again, which pleased Gwen a little. Everyone likes to be recognized. Okay, I'm Spider-Woman, just call her Spider-Gwen. Jessica interrupted immediately, as if she was afraid that Gwen would be cheated. After all, Jessica has much more experience than Gwen. She wasn't fooled by Ron at all. After all, she has heard of Daredevil, but she has never heard of Batman. Ron looked at her, and said, Spider-Woman. Did your ability come from a spider? That's right. Jessica casually said that Spider-Man's ability comes from similar sources. Did your ability come from bats? Gwen asked curiously. Jessica took one look to stop her. No, bats only bring fear to people. Ron's deep voice sounded, which actually made Gwen feel very handsome. It's like an uncle in front of me. Therefore, she was very curious about Ron under the mask. Then what is your ability? My money ability is rich. After Gwen asked, Ron replied in a low voice. Gwen and Jessica fell into silence for a moment. This sentence was really a crit for the two of them. However, when they raised their heads, the black figure had disappeared, and their eyes fell on their faces again. They looked around, but couldn't find the figure no matter what. The two looked at each other, neither knowing what to say. Although it was only a short-term contact, it made them remember deeply. Batman, Gwen murmured inwardly. Under the mask, she bit her lower lip lightly. Undoubtedly, this mysterious, interesting, and rich figure left a shadow in her heart. After fooling the two of them, Ron teleported back home. That's why Gwen and Jessica didn't even hear the sound of the cape. Generally, although Batman disappears suddenly, there will be a little noise from the cloak. Ron lamented that he had found the essence of Batman. Isn't the most powerful thing about Batman is his money ability? To be honest, Batman's suit of armor is not very comfortable to wear. It's okay for a while, but it's torture after a long time. No idea how Bruce Wayne wore it. Kelly has woken up. She woke up in the car, and the bumblebee almost threw her out with a drift, and then woke up immediately. Then I found out that Ron was not there, so I had to wait for Ron to come back alone. What happened? Kelly just asked worriedly, and had no other thoughts. It's nothing, I found the culprit who dumped the bumblebee cobweb last time. Ron laughed, thinking it was funny. Kelly nodded and said no more. Another beautiful night. Next, Carrie followed Ron to learn magic, and quickly improved her understanding of spells. Her ability is not bad, even after changing the magic system, it still improves rapidly. She also doesn't like the previous magic system very much now, and doesn't like to borrow power. As for Ron, what happened that night was just a blip. Daredevil or something is too far behind his level. Even the so-called underground Emperor Jin Bing is nothing but ants. Spider-Gwen and Spider-Woman Jessica, Ron didn't bother anymore. For him, that night was just a matter of fun and wanting to play role-playing. Letting Batman appear in this world just made him feel a little bit interesting. Elliot Randolph was annoyed. That shit DHS had been looking for him since meeting Nick Fury that day. And every time you have to face Nick Fury who has the same one eye as Odin. It made him a little stressed. Now he rushed to the building in New York with the prepared things as if he was going to work. Then someone was waiting for his arrival and took him all the way up the elevator. It's just that the person who picked him up didn't have the authority to go directly to the top floor, and someone changed to lead the way halfway. What a hassle. Fortunately, Elliot has gotten used to it, and looks as usual. Soon met Nick Fury and the female agent. The two of them were like demons, wanting to know about Asgard crazily, and kept asking him about the myth. Doctor, did you find out about the deeds of Ron we talked about last time? As soon as he came in, Nick Fury asked directly. Definitely, only a little bit of documentation. Elliot also quickly replied. The record about Ron is only mentioned in the Valkyrie chapter. PhD. Nick Fury yelled at him. But that's not what I said last time. Nick Fury watched him calmly. Elliot paused for a moment, turned his mind and said immediately, oh, yes, but that's the name I found him. Shouldn't you be correcting me? Think I knew the name, and you already knew this name, right? From your cognition, that's his name, so you don't have any doubts. Nick Fury looked at him oppressively, leaning forward slightly, as if he was going to pounce on him immediately. The Hill agent behind him has also put his hand on his waist, ready to take out his gun at any time. No, it's just that I'm familiar with Norse mythology. Elliot immediately defended himself. However, the shiny black forehead and one-eyed eyes are extremely oppressive, which makes him a little nervous and speaks incoherently. Doctor, tell me, who are you? We have checked your past, and the ancestors of your family all look exactly like you, so don't tell me this is your family's ability. Nick Fury was silent for a moment, then continued to speak. Elliot's face suddenly changed, and he seemed to be struggling. Doctor, don't make a wrong decision, we have no malicious intentions, we just want to know the truth. When the word truth was spoken, Elliot sat down in a chair. Okay, I say. Elliot chose the latter between resistance and submission. This should have been no surprise. He's no better than Ron in the back office. And he's really fighting the scum. Not pretending like Ron. Nick Fury glanced around, signifying safety, and sat down too. But Agent Hill didn't relax, his hand was still in that position, making a vigilant movement. Doctor, who are you? Nick Fury began to ask slowly. As you can imagine, I am a man of Asgard, what you call a man of myth. Elliot gave up struggling and decided to come clean. Compared with his little life, it seems nothing. The atmosphere in the entire office became heavy. Even Agent Hill pursed his lower lip, slightly in disbelief. Even though she has been exposed to enough secrets in this world, at the moment still can't believe it. This is exaggerated. Only Nick Fury is receptive enough. Although he in this world has not experienced Captain Marvel, naturally there is no secret invasion of the Skrulls, and he cannot clearly know the existence of aliens. But as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., he has been exposed to more secrets and can accept some things more. Nick Fury asked in a deep voice, "Can you elaborate?" "Definitely, it's all my fault." Elliot spread out his hands and played the accordion. "In the 16th century, I fell in love with a Scottish girl, so I drank too much and told her these stories. Who would have thought that her big brother would actually be recorded, so these myths slowly spread." "Definitely, I am referring to some stories, but most of the records are left by the Norse religion." Elliot said. "Why Norse gods?" Nick Fury asked, puzzled. "Because when I came here, Asgard descended on Norway. Taking advantage of the war, I ran away and stayed on Earth." Elliot said with some shame, but quickly adjusted his mentality. "In Asgard he's just a grinder, but on Earth he's a man. Isn't this better than dawdling in Asgard?" So, he likes the Earth instead. Even if he had to go back to Asgard, he didn't want to go back. Nick Fury was acutely aware of something. So he asked, "Your position is not high." "I have a fart position. I am a stonemason, the lowest level in Asgard. I spend my days doing nothing until Asgard conscripts, so I joined." Elliot said very simply, without hiding anything. Nick Fury was suddenly a little disappointed, but it was normal after thinking about it. If you are doing well in Asgard, how can you come to Earth? But it's good enough to learn about Asgard. "Well, what you said about Asgard, that is, are all those stories true?" asked Nick Fury. "Definitely, most of it is true, and it is not excluded that I am a bit exaggerated." Elliot said directly. "The god King Odin and Thor are real." Even though Nick Fury had already guessed, he couldn't help being shocked at this moment. It turns out that those myths are all sophisticated. Then their human beings are really small. But Nick Fury did not despair. As a one-eyed man, he still has this psychological quality. "Definitely, the painting you showed me, the goddess of war Sif is also real, and Ron, I really didn't expect him to come to Earth." Elliot decisively sold all of them, but he dared not say anything. Like Hela, the goddess of death. Even when he was bragging, he didn't dare to say it. Once exposed, Odin will surely kill him. He didn't doubt God King Odin's strength and ability at all. And he's on Earth now, and it's not true that Asgard doesn't know. Heimdall stared at the 9 realms every day, but he didn't stare blankly. "You know them?" Agent Hill couldn't help asking. She sounded very curious. People are very curious. It's just that the agent can generally suppress it. Nick Fury didn't blame her either, but looked at Elliot. "Because he is also curious. Where do I know them? I wish I could get to know Thor, he is the next god king. Unfortunately, even Sif, the goddess of war, I have only seen from a distance." Elliot said excitedly, disappointing the two of them again. "It seems that he is really just a little guy. The kind no one cares about." "Then tell me about Ron." Nick Fury pointed to the picture of Ron and said. But CHFA, just when Nick Fury was looking at Elliot, Ron's picture suddenly moved and his eyes rolled. As a powerful Dharma god, Ron's magic attainments have reached an unbelievable level. Nick Fury called his name over and over again, so naturally he knew it. And directly used magic to possess the picture. This is very funny. This ability is the same as the name of the true god cannot be called. If Elliot really complained about Odin, he was in trouble. Elliot said, "Ron, people say he can only drink, and I only saw him once or twice." "Only drink?" Hill agent asked curiously. "That's right, it means that he doesn't know anything else, and he joined the logistics department when he was recruited." Elliot nodded immediately, and Ron's picture rolled his eyes. "It seems that he was too low-key at first. Then how do you know him?" "According to him, there must be many in Asgard." Nick Fury was acutely aware of something. If it was really as bad as Elliot said, how could Elliot know about it? "And it can appear on the Earth with Sif, the goddess of war. The things in this painting are obviously very important. Important things will be sent to unimportant people. No one dares to do this. Because he's a lucky guy." Elliot suddenly said with envy and hatred. "Do you know the Valkyrie Legion?" Elliot looked at the two. Nick Fury and Hill agent both nodded one after another. Apparently they've done their homework and know most of the Norse mythology stuff. Norse mythology is basically written by the Norse religion. According to Norseism and Asgard are connected, so most of them are true. The strongest Valkyrie in the Valkyrie army is called Valkyrie, and Valkyrie was in his team before. Can I not know him? Elliot still had a jealous tone. Apparently Ron's luck was the envy of an unknown number of Asgardians. This is Valkyrie, after all. Neither of Nick Fury expected that there was such a relationship in it. As top agents, the two immediately thought of more. If he could have a relationship with Valkyrie, Ron wouldn't be an ordinary person. Then why is he with Sif, the goddess of war? Director Braised Egg continued to ask. I don't know about that, maybe he was very lucky to know the goddess of war again. Elliot shrugged. Then Nick Fury asked a lot more, but obviously he didn't know much. After all, he is only a little transparent in Asgard, and all he can know is the news of the public. Want to know what core secrets? Then Doctor, you can go. Nick Fury said, but I hope you don't reveal your identity. It's been nearly 1,000 years, and I've never been exposed. Elliot looked at Nick Fury and said, as for this time, it was a surprise. He was scammed by Nick Fury. He smiled, and sent Elliot off. Agent Hill came over and looked at Nick Fury with an unsatisfactory expression on her face. Seems to want to know more about the mythical stuff. This is too attractive for them. Do you think what he said was true or false? Nick Fury asked Hill agent. Maria Hill immediately said, it should be true, but there may be some hearsay. Yeah, after all, his identity is not enough. Braised Dan sighed, feeling a little pain in his head. But I don't think this person will be so simple. Agent Hill knew he was referring to Ron. I think so too. He is very mysterious. He knows the means of people on Earth, and he still has enough money. It's very strange. Dr. Elliot has not had as much money as him for so many years. So Hill agent said softly. Nick Fury said without a smile, how can it be so simple to be able to have a relationship with Valkyrie and the female fighter Shendu? For example, how many first-level agents do you know? Hill agent shook his head, obviously he didn't know any of them. So what do we do now? Hill had to ask Nick Fury. Nick Fury's one eye glanced at the photo and thought it seemed a little strange. But he didn't know what went wrong, he just had this feeling faintly. He tapped his fingers, and then said to Hill agent. The most important thing for us now is to know his purpose and what he wants to do. Go and call Natasha Romanoff agent, maybe there is a task for her. Didn't expect to be known by S.H.I.E.L.D. Ron took a sip of his drink and didn't pay much attention. S.H.I.E.L.D. has been brilliant for the past few years. Moreover, it can no longer be called S.H.I.E.L.D., it should be called Snake Shield. Throughout S.H.I.E.L.D., it is estimated that there are many more people in Hydra than in S.H.I.E.L.D. In terms of lurking, Ron originally called Hydra the most fishy. Hurry up and practice, meditating and thinking about it. Ron looked at Kelly and shouted. He is very strict when he teaches. Even Kelly would be scolded by him. Fortunately, Kelly has gotten used to it, and will find a way to make up for it after practicing every day. And her magic attainments are indeed improving rapidly. Although compared with Ron, there is still a huge amount of gap. But Kelly was already content. She has resisted Dormammu's call. Well, when she was weak, Dormammu didn't need her consent to let her go to the Dark Dimension. With a direct summoning spell, she will enter the Dark Dimension as soon as she closes her eyes and opens them. As for Kelly, she always wanted to escape from that ghost place. Now it finally has this capital. At the same time, Natasha Romanoff walked out of the S.H.I.E.L.D. building with a calm expression, but her eyes were slack from time to time, and she still couldn't express her inner movement. Although she was very calm at the time, she fooled Nick Fury with her more than 10 years of agent experience. But she still recognized who this person was at a glance. Even if she dies, she cannot be forgotten. Celestial Master of the Red House. Natasha Romanoff seems to have returned to the place that filled her with all kinds of sad memories and pain. The never-ending training, the cruel competition like raising GU. Definitely, the main thing is that Red House changed her habits. For example, she has to put handcuffs on herself before going to bed. Even after she became an adult, she didn't change this habit until recently. The most terrifying habit is to let them brainwash themselves. The objects of brainwashing are the people in the photos. Celestial Master. In those years, as soon as Natasha Romanoff saw his photo and thought of the word Celestial Master, the only word in her mind was allegiance. No one knows how she got here all these years. This is where the Red House is scary. So, Natasha Romanoff at the moment looked at the photo and was cursing in his mind that he was a villain, a big bad guy. But her heart was still full of fear, and this face appeared in her mind when she closed her eyes. Redhead Natasha Romanoff glanced back at the building, bewildered. Are you really going to see him? Recall what Nick Fury said about the Celestial Master. He is different from anyone you have come into contact with before. He may be supreme, he may have the ability to control your life, and he may even be a god. Even when Nick Fury said these words, he was a little dignified. Natasha Romanoff felt it acutely. With a light bite, Natasha Romanoff got into the car without hesitation. With her hands on the steering wheel, she cheered herself up. Maybe he doesn't know himself. Recalling all the things that S.H.I.E.L.D. brought her, the most important thing is to make her understand why people live. She won't back down. Looking at the photo in hand, Natasha Romanoff has seen it countless times. In the Red House, she stares at the photos every day when she wakes up and before going to bed, because this is their belief. Vaguely, Natasha Romanoff seemed to blink when she saw the photo. Ah, she let out a cry, and the photo fell from her hands. She quickly picked it up and looked at it, and found that there was nothing unusual. Confirming that she might be hallucinating, Natasha Romanoff hurriedly saved the photo. The fear in her heart prevented her from destroying Ron's photos at will. Natasha Romanoff doesn't know whether she is more afraid of the Red House or the Celestial Master. After a long time, she started the car slowly and headed for the wealthy district. The reason for the visit is simple, definitely not to check the water meter, but to apply for the position of housekeeper. This was posted online a while ago, as if on purpose to give S.H.I.E.L.D. a chance. Thinking of this, Natasha Romanoff felt more and more uneasy. But she guessed right, it was indeed Ron's intention. After learning of Nick Fury's unimaginative plan, he sent a job posting. Definitely, his estate does need a steward too. He and Kelly didn't care about it. Although, this is just a small spell problem for them. But there are coolies who are given away for free, so don't give them away for nothing. Needless to say, the job of housekeeper is quite popular in the lighthouse country. In particular, the applicants are basically women, ranging from 25 to 35 years old. Blondes, brunettes, all skin tones, all heights. Made Ron feel like a beauty pageant. Perhaps most people have other ideas, such as flying on a branch and becoming a phoenix. Especially after seeing Ron's youthful appearance, everyone's eyes burst into flames. Kelly was staring at him from the side, but she didn't have any jealous expression, and she didn't know what she was looking at. Another blonde girl with long legs was sent away. Ron didn't show any expression. Not without satisfying him. It's just that he doesn't know how to choose. After all, both he and Kelly have secrets. Although he doesn't care, he can't let too many people know. It's like people in common don't know that there is magic in this world. Mage likes to keep herself aloof. Dang tang tang. There was a very rhythmic trampling sound of high heels. Just listening to the sound, Ron felt a little interesting. Another newcomer. Ron took a critical look. Formal attire, black's blazer and skirt, black's pantyhose and high heels. Let the opponent's figure become very well proportioned and tall. Hello, my name is Jessica Drew, and I'm here to apply for the position of housekeeper. Jessica had a professional smile, and that smile alone was worth millions. It makes people feel like a spring breeze, and they definitely feel good when they wake up in the morning. Definitely, most of all she is Jessica. Ron said earlier that her outfit does not hide her features at all, and her eye patch is not Superman glasses. Naturally, he recognized her at a glance, Spider-Woman. Ron looked normal and glanced at Jessica. Jessica is also playing star Ron, unexpectedly young and handsome, and vaguely familiar. This is my CV. Jessica handed Ron her resume. Ron picked up his resume and flipped through it. Kelly gave him a strange look, knowing that Ron was interested in this girl named Jessica. Because before applying for the job, Ron only looked at it twice, and didn't even read the resume. This was the first zero he saw on his resume. Jessica's resume is perfectly done. Graduated from college, have several years of experience, and more importantly, very concise. But Ron knew it was fake when he saw it. After all, it was an agent before, it's impossible without some skills. It seems that agents are very good at making such fake files. Ron glanced casually, then looked at Jessica with a half-smile. Not bad, I'm very satisfied. Jessica still had a very professional smile, only showing her 8 teeth, and she didn't seem overly excited. Obviously, she is different from those who had other purposes before. It seems that she is just looking for a job, instead of wanting to work and suddenly becoming a hostess. But, hearing Ron's change of subject, Jessica frowned slightly. I can't tell you the answer yet, I will contact you tomorrow. Ron said. Jessica nodded, 857, and then she didn't stay here any longer, and just walked away. This job is also very necessary for her. Although she is Spider-Woman, she is not a super criminal. Heroes have to eat too. Not all superheroes or Batman and Iron Man eat and drink. You have a crush on her. Kelly leaned over and spoke directly in his ear. After that, he blew his breath, which made Ron itchy. Started messing around again, a little interested. Ron didn't hide anything, instead he looked at Kelly with a smile, wanting to see what happened to her. Then I help you. Seeing Kelly's expression that didn't look like a fake, Ron was a little confused. Think too much, she is not as good as you. Ron said cheerfully, shifting the subject away. There was no abnormality in Kelly's expression, and she didn't know what she was thinking. Having been with Kelly for so long, Ron already knew her personality. Dare to love and hate, but at the same time a bit eccentric, do whatever you want. For example, if she hates Dormammu, she directly opposes the Uncle Dormammu. If you like Ron, follow him directly. It is such a character. Therefore, Ron was not sure what Kelly wanted to do and what she would do. Laugh. Natasha Romanoff drove the car all the way to the outside of the manor. She took a deep breath and let her expression become very calm. Then he opened the door and got out of the car, just passing by with a sports car on his face. The people in the car whistled. Disgust flashed in Natasha Romanoff's eyes. Playboy, don't fall into her hands. That's right, it happened to be Tony Stark passing by. Natasha Romanoff's memory naturally remembers this famous playboy. Natasha Romanoff walked in with the perfect resume and documents that S.H.I.E.L.D. had prepared a long time ago. It belongs to the agent's habit, so she carefully observed the manor. She can confirm that there is no one else in this manor. As the celestial master of Leviathan, there is no agent protection around him. Thoughts were running wild in her mind, but Natasha Romanoff's footsteps didn't stop at all, and her expression remained the same. She was also afraid that Ron had other agents from the Red House around him, which might expose her. But now she relaxes a lot. Soon, she walked into the hall and saw 2 people. She first glanced at Kelly secretly, and she confirmed that she had never seen it before, and it wasn't an agent from her batch of red houses. Definitely, it is also possible to train later. Then, she just looked at Ron. Only then did she realize that she was wrong, and the fear in her heart poured out like an irresistible torrent. Especially when she found that Ron was exactly the same as the photos she saw in the Red House period, she was speechless. She looked at Ron's photos when she was a child, and now that she has grown up, Ron is still exactly the same as before. Maybe Nick Fury is right, he is God. After knowing this, Natasha Romanoff's throat felt a little dry. Apparently, Nick Fury didn't tell her about Asgard. Looking at Ron's meaningful eyes, Natasha Romanoff calmed down. There must be no panic now. Hi, I'm Natalie. As she spoke, she passed her resume with enchanting steps. Ron smiled slightly. Natasha Romanoff was still at first blood. At that time, he kept Dottie from taking the final steps on Natasha Romanoff, that is, not breaking her blood and making her fertile. Unexpectedly, she has maintained it until now. It seems that Natasha Romanoff, who was not hit, did not give up on herself as before. Moreover, her figure is even better than Jessica's, and her dress is similar to Jessica's. They are all professional attire, but they have their own flavors. Ron took it casually, and then looked at it. Well, S.H.I.E.L.D. is still more professional than Jessica. At least Natasha Romanoff's resume looks pretty intimidating. And she also used a pseudonym, Natalie Roman. Ron also started acting with her, and began to ask seriously. Have you been a housekeeper before? Yes, I have 3 years of experience as a housekeeper. I used to have hundreds of servants in the castle where the sun never sets. Natasha Romanoff started talking with a professional smile on her face. In terms of manners, agents are much more trained than stewardesses. Because the agent sometimes wants to make himself look like a noble lady, etiquette is naturally very important. It can be said that training an agent is definitely very troublesome. Because the agent is not only able to fight and use weapons, but more importantly, what to do. Just like Natasha Romanoff at the moment, she can do whatever she wants. Ron asked several questions in a row, and Natasha Romanoff was able to answer them calmly. And she has controlled her emotions very well. As expected of the most excellent Black Widow. Ron sighed inwardly. The Red House does have a set of training Black Widow. Needless to say, Dottie Underwood, Ron now trusts her very much. Natasha Romanoff is known as the most excellent Black Widow, outstanding performance. So much so that the next generation of Black Widow Elaine is not convinced by her. Every generation of Black Widow is the top agent in the world. Okay, I'm sure it's you. Ron said and merged the resume into one. However, I can't recruit too many servants, and you may have to do many things. I will also recruit a housekeeper to manage external affairs, and you will take care of our daily life. Ron looked at Carrie, who was definitely casual. She looked at this red-haired woman very interestingly, even more interesting than the previous Jessica. Definitely, I can handle it. Natasha Romanoff immediately responded. Although the manor is a bit big, it is not a problem for her. Definitely, Shi Changding will not stay here any longer. Don't look at her at the moment, she hides her emotions very well, but she is still extremely terrified inside. It's just that her long experience as an agent made her temporarily hide her emotions. So after she succeeded, she immediately said, I want to go around and get acquainted with this place. Definitely. Ron smiled, making Natasha Romanoff's heart skip a beat. Natasha Romanoff's pace was not chaotic. While she was getting familiar with the manor seriously, she sent a message to Nick Fury while looking for an opportunity. When Nick Fury received the news, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief. He did not use the means of monitoring, because he was afraid of being found out. After all, even the technology of the Bumblebee is available, and such backward methods may not be easy to use. That's why he asked Natasha Romanoff to use the simplest method to find an opportunity to send out the news. If you haven't sent a message for a long time, then there are other means. Fortunately, now Natasha Romanoff has succeeded. Soon, Natasha Romanoff was familiar with every corner of the manor, and she knew all kinds of attack and escape routes in her mind. Ron at the moment also notified Jessica that she had also been hired. Apart from these two, Ron is not planning to hire Filipino maids or anything. He doesn't need men either. There are other people who are still an eyesore. Therefore, these two people must be very tired. Ron smiled and looked at Natasha Romanoff on the lawn. Now that Natasha Romanoff has told S.H.I.E.L.D. that it's okay, it's time for a showdown. Ron naturally wanted to stir up the fear in her heart. Soon it was time for dinner. As an advanced agent, Natasha Romanoff also has cooking skills. After Kelly ate it, she said it was not bad. Looking at Natasha Romanoff, Shendu softened a lot. In fact, there is a chain of contempt in the West. For example, the red hair of Natasha Romanoff at the moment is at the bottom of the chain of contempt. Blonde hair is naturally the tallest, which is why so many people go blonde. These are very invisible contempt, generally do not show, you can't even notice it. Although Kelly didn't despise her red hair, it didn't look very pleasing to the eye. You can find a room wherever you want. Ron to Natasha Romanoff. Natasha Romanoff quickly found a room close to the master bedroom. Although she was eager to find the furthest one in her heart, she knew that it was easy to reveal her truth. Moreover, she also has the purpose of monitoring Ron. In the dead of night, Natasha Romanoff was lying down but couldn't fall asleep. She didn't fall asleep until the middle of the night. And at this moment, she had a dream. Natasha Romanoff. Ron's voice sounded and suddenly appeared beside her. Who? Natasha Romanoff snapped her eyes open, then took the pistol from under the pillow and aimed it at Ron. Quote. Natasha Romanoff blurted out the words. Apparently it was like a nightmare in her mind. Ron looked her straight in the eyes. You've let me down. Why? Natasha Romanoff gripped the gun tightly, her fingers turning white. But still aimed at Ron firmly. Put the gun down. Ron said softly, irresistible. And Natasha Romanoff really couldn't resist. The surrender deep in her heart, the habit cultivated by the Red House, made her immediately obey the order. This is the sense of surrender instilled in her mind since she was a child, and it is even more terrifying than brainwashing. She slowly put down the gun in her hand, then lowered her head. Look into my eyes. Ron squeezed her chin and lifted her head up. Natasha Romanoff looked at Ron helplessly, full of desolation. I'm disappointed that you left me. You know why you're special. Not receiving the gift of the Red House like everyone else. Ron asked softly, but it was like a devil's whisper, hitting Natasha Romanoff's heart one after another. When Natasha Romanoff heard the word, gift, her body couldn't help shaking. The memory hidden in the deepest part of my heart burst out like a collapsed dam. Regarding the various things about the Red House, there are also gifts received by others. Every agent has become a ruthless killing machine. Because that's what I asked for, and I know you're special. I also know that we will meet again eventually. Ron pinched her white chin, keeping Natasha Romanoff looking into his eyes. He saw all the emotional changes in Natasha Romanoff's eyes. In the end, it turned into fear again. This time, don't think about leaving me anymore. You are the most excellent Black Widow I have ever cultivated. Ron's tone was resolute. Natasha Romanoff opened her mouth, and the dream suddenly shattered. Ah! A scream broke the silence of the night. Natasha Romanoff woke up from the nightmare and found that she was still lying there, but her whole body was soaked, as if it was just a nightmare. Is it a nightmare? Natasha Romanoff asked herself inwardly. In the first few years she left the Red House, she also had frequent nightmares. But never this scene. Her nightmare is often the situation inside the Red House. Not as it is now, true. It is true. As if it really happened just now. Natasha Romanoff was also sure in her heart that it was probably not a dream. That was the Celestial Master's warning to her. Thinking of all the magic of Ron, it is not surprising to have this kind of ability. She reached out and looked under the pillow, and the pistol lay quietly underneath. Natasha Romanoff felt parched and wanted to go out for a drink, but when she walked to the door and held her hand on the doorknob, she hesitated. She dared not go out. She was afraid that someone would look at her when she opened the door. In the end, she could only come to the window and open it. The cool cold wind blew on her body, and she felt a little calmed down. But the fear in my heart still lingers in the depths, and I don't want to leave. Ah! After a long time, Natasha Romanoff smiled wryly. It seems that she can only be obedient, and if she betrays again, she doesn't know what the consequences will be. As for what Ron said, she also remembered it clearly. She is very special, the most excellent Black Widow. Ron heard her scream, but nothing happened. Just holding Kelly in his arms and meditating. Even he feels a bit complicated. When I'm not doing anything, I want to be a quiet fish, but my heart is extremely cold. It's like he knew all kinds of cruelty in the Red House, but he didn't let the Red House change, and he still treated all the girls cruelly. Just save the fate of Dottie and Natasha Romanoff. For countless Red House agents, this is insignificant at all. It was the same with the original Nine Realms War. The Nine Realms War caused countless lives in the Nine Realms to die, but he didn't seem to see it. There is not even a little sympathy in my heart. Well, he is such a cruel and heartless man. But he also thought he was doing the right thing. When you should be kind, you will be kind, but when you are cruel, you should never have kind thoughts. Therefore, he was also extremely indifferent and cruel to Natasha Romanoff just now. Of course that didn't scare Natasha Romanoff. If she really dared to be half-hearted, Ron wouldn't care if she was raised by the Red House. Ron stared straight through the thick walls. Natasha Romanoff, who saw all kinds of hesitation to escape, finally lay back. This means that the most excellent Black Widow has already accepted his fate. People are used to compromise once, there will be a second time, and then countless times. On the second day, Natasha Romanoff, who had a dark circle under her eye, hurriedly got up, and then began to enter the state of housekeeping. Even with all kinds of thoughts in her mind, she is still impeccable in this respect. Therefore, she will do her best. Ron appeared on the stairs, watching a busy Natasha Romanoff. Natasha Romanoff naturally also found Ron. She opened her mouth, but didn't know how to shout. "Just call me Ron." Ron smiled meaningfully. "Yes, sir," Natasha Romanoff said immediately. Sure enough, it was not a dream. Natasha Romanoff's fear emerged again, and she didn't dare to look at Ron anymore. After Kelly got down, she also looked at Natasha Romanoff strangely. She naturally felt Natasha Romanoff's mood swings. Although she hides it well, Mage is very sensitive about it. Not long after, Jessica also arrived from outside, and she brought a lot of things. "Butler, of course he will stay here all the time." She saw an extra Natasha Romanoff, and Ron also introduced it, knowing that Natasha Romanoff had no conflict with her. "Mr. Ron, aren't you going to find a servant?" Jessica asked immediately. "No, you don't have anyone else with you over there, do you?" Ron also asked. Jessica gave Natasha Romanoff a pitiful look. It was miserable. Such a big manor, should she manage it? And there are no servants. "No," Jessica said decisively. "There's only one Gwen, no problem." After all, Gwen was only a high school student, and she was directly abandoned by her. After breakfast, Natasha Romanoff found Ron. "Mr. Ron, I need to go out." Natasha Romanoff wanted to make an excuse, but couldn't come up with Ron. So he said it directly. "Go, come back early." Ron patted Natasha Romanoff on the head. Natasha Romanoff left without changing her expression. Her footsteps were heavy, and she didn't feel the sweat on her back until she left the manor. She then drove straight to S.H.I.E.L.D. without hesitation. Next, she was going to stay with Ron. Nick Fury naturally has no objection to this, although it is a pity that there is an advanced agent who cannot perform missions. "Can you tell me, who is he?" Natasha Romanoff asked tentatively. "Do you know Norse mythology?" After a moment of silence, Nick Fury said. "Definitely." Natasha Romanoff said that she is still very knowledgeable. "He is a god in Norse mythology." Knowing this answer, Natasha Romanoff swallowed. "I see." She didn't know how to leave S.H.I.E.L.D., she only knew that she was a little confused. "It wasn't until I sat in the car that I felt that my situation was very bad." Quote. Although Ron's image is very different from the god she knows. But she didn't have the slightest doubt. They even believed that Ron was their god since they were young. This is what the Red House taught since childhood. Next, Natasha Romanoff and Jessica stepped into the butler role. Although there are very few people, almost none, but they still do their best. Natasha Romanoff never told Nick Fury anything more. Apparently, Nick Fury doesn't know much about the Red House. After all, there are still few agents from the Red House. And after Natasha Romanoff defected to S.H.I.E.L.D., she was unwilling to say much about the previous things. So, this creates a blind spot for Nick Fury. No idea Natasha Romanoff already knew Ron. Natasha Romanoff also sent S.H.I.E.L.D. mostly irrelevant messages. Seeing her obedient appearance, Ron also nodded. And soon, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s attention was not on him. Jessica saw that Natasha Romanoff was cleaning the window alone, and she also came over to help. She could see that Natasha Romanoff was not easy. It's not that Natasha Romanoff doesn't look like a butler, but Natasha Romanoff's ability is too much and too strong. Just like her former agent has extraordinary physical strength and ability. So, Jessica also wanted to get close to Natasha Romanoff. She was worried that Natasha Romanoff was approaching Ron with other ideas, so she wouldn't have to wade through this muddy water. After all, she is no longer an agent, and now she is just an ordinary superhero. Thanks. Natasha Romanoff also keenly noticed the difference in Jessica. But she thought Jessica was raised by the Red House. Therefore, she does not agree with Jessica. Those who come out of the Red House cannot have friends, they are always hostile. Even if it is doing tasks outside. The two had their own thoughts, and then began to use words to probe into their respective backgrounds. Just like a confrontation between masters, they all have hidden murderous intentions. It's a pity that the two of them are like two Tai Chi masters. They chatted for a long time, but each of them calmly returned to the past. The two took a deep look at each other. The windows are finished, how about cutting the grass together? It's time for some exercise. The two said something each, and then went to the lawn with tools. Although Ron doesn't like flowers and plants, Such a large lawn can't be wasted. So the trimming was left to Natasha Romanoff. The two started working together, one with a lawnmower and the other with large scissors. Just as the two continued to confront each other, the Hornet came back with a roar. Ron got out of the car with his arms around Kelly, and then said to Bumblebee, "Go and rest." Bumblebee, Dee, the horn twice, and then drove into the garage by itself. Natasha Romanoff and Jessica immediately petrified. They clearly saw that there was no one on the Hornet. The two looked at each other, trying to guess straight. Artificial intelligence, Natasha Romanoff thought. In this day and age, artificial intelligence is not uncommon. Although only the genius of Tony Stark made a JARVIS. But S.H.I.E.L.D. is not impossible. It is proof that JARVIS was cracked casually afterwards. Lee how it's just that Nick Fury can't even trust humans, how can he trust artificial intelligence? Jessica also guessed this way, but felt that Ron was getting more and more mysterious. The two never imagined that this is not artificial intelligence at all, but carbon-based life. When Ron and Kelly entered the manor, the two continued to confront each other. After a while, they are already sisters. But everyone knows that they are just superficial sisters. Jessica originally wanted to quit without this troubled water, but being led by Natasha Romanoff has made her unable to quit. She at the moment just wanted not to affect herself. Definitely, Ron is still very good to her. If possible, she also wants to protect Ron. The criminals cannot be allowed to succeed in their schemes. Jessica thought to herself. So the next few nights were uneventful. Jessica, who was going out to be a good neighbor at night, didn't even put on her uniform and blindfold. She wondered if she was overthinking. Tony Stark disappeared. When the two confronted each other, a major event happened. Looking at the news in the morning, in just a short period of time, it has already become known to everyone. Definitely, the stock of Stark Group is also in a cliff-like situation. It hit the limit immediately. Countless stockholders claim that the end is coming. Obviously, for most people, they only care about the stock of Stark Group, and don't care about Tony's life or death. And after this incident, S.H.I.E.L.D. couldn't pay attention to Ron. The military, S.H.I.E.L.D. and various organizations have all started to send people to find Tony Stark. Ron was naturally happy to let it go, and even Natasha Romanoff was forgotten. He knew that by the time Tony came out of the cave, S.H.I.E.L.D. would have no more thoughts on him. Who called Tony Stark too high profile? His personality is the complete opposite of Batman's. Bruce Wayne believes that only by revealing his identity can he protect those around him. Tony did the opposite, let everyone know, and see who dares to do it. Moreover, it will be at least some time before he comes out of the cave. After all, this is not a movie, just tap the hammer twice, and the first generation of steel armor can be done well. So, the leisurely time is still long. This playboy has this day. This is Natasha Romanoff's puzzle. It deserves it. As for Jessica, it's even simpler, and Kelly is simply eating melons. The most important thing for Kelly now is to practice magic, and everything else is none of her business. "Sister, who do you think did this?" Natasha Romanoff asked Jessica. Jessica immediately became vigilant. The confrontation between the two was not over yet. The superficial sisters don't know when they will stab you in the back. How do I know? Maybe those organizations don't like him, or they just want to make some money. Jessica said casually. After all, no one would have guessed at this time that Obadiah did it. Obadiah also owns shares in the Stark Group, and it stands to reason that he is the one who feels the most distressed when the shares fall like this. "Do you say he is dead or alive?" Natasha Romanoff asked again. "It's not my business." Jessica curled her lips. This kind of playboy is still a warmonger, the most unpopular. Even if she is Spider-Woman, she still can't get used to it. Natasha Romanoff also smiled, looking at Jessica's back. This woman is simply too careful. And, also very mysterious. Last night, Natasha Romanoff noticed that Jessica's room was empty. The nature of being an agent made her curious about what Jessica did. She felt more and more that Jessica was an agent of the Red House. At the same time, the Middle East does not know which region the cave is in. Tony Stark woke up slowly, unable to accept his current situation. The good old Ethan persuaded him in every possible way, and then he cheered up again. "What do they want me to do?" Tony asked Ethan. I don't know, probably they want you to help them make missiles. Ethan replied honestly. Tony suddenly remembered the pattern of the Stark group he saw before being bombed. He felt cold. Why don't you know how your weapons were sold to this kind of organization? Who the hell did it? At the same time, he has made up his mind. If you can go back to the lighthouse country, close the weapons department. Then Tony fooled these stupid members of the Ten Rings and started to build his own armor. Ethan didn't know what it was, but helped Tony Stark anyway. Maybe he really was sent by God. All it takes is to make Tony Stark a good guy. After SHIELD's large-scale search for Tony failed, Natasha Romanoff received a new mission. But, she said directly to Nick Fury, I'm exposed. It's exposed, what? Your identity. Nick Fury was still talking in a hurry when he woke up suddenly. Yes, he knows who I am. Natasha Romanoff has long been prepared, chef, all of this is her plan. Didn't even report to Ron. No one knows how she got here during this time. Seeing Ron every day, the fear in my heart came out unconsciously. Even though Ron was very peaceful, she still couldn't change. To assuage her inner fears, Natasha Romanoff knew it was only time. So she wanted to be with Ron and break her fears. And, she really didn't think about betraying. When she betrayed the Red House, she had been anxious for a long time. Now seeing that the Red House has been brainwashing them, Ree has no intention of resisting. Nick Fury fell silent, but this was obviously as early as he expected. Otherwise he wouldn't have sent Natasha Romanoff, an advanced agent. There are a lot of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, but at the level of Black Widow, there are only a few Hawkeyes. Unexpectedly, there was still a problem. Did he do nothing to you? Nick Fury asked immediately, and he already had an answer. No, but he asked me to stay and thought it was easy for me. Natasha Romanoff's tone didn't fluctuate in any way, as it seemed. Even he, the king of agents, couldn't tell the truth from the fake. Well then, your job is to keep him steady. And try to know his purpose. Nick Fury compromised. He said he was on vacation. Natasha Romanoff said suddenly, because Ron walked up to her and told her the answer. Natasha Romanoff paused, and the hand holding the phone trembled slightly. I see. Nick Fury's expression changed for a while, and he naturally didn't believe it, but he still hung up the phone without saying anything. He just hoped that Ron really didn't have too many ideas. Then, Nick Fury remembered Dr. Elliot's words. The Earth was Asgard's territory thousands of years ago, but the gods and kings didn't care about it because human beings are too weak. Any race in the 9 realms is infinitely stronger than humans. Nick Fury found a reason for himself and felt relieved a lot. Maybe people don't like them at all. Definitely, the Avengers program cannot be cancelled either. Ron doesn't like it, but the universe is too big, who can guarantee that there will be no enemies all the time? Ron at the moment shaves Natasha Romanoff's cheek. Don't be afraid, you should let fear be your strength, not your weakness. Natasha Romanoff took a deep breath. Yes, Celestial Master. Ron smiled slightly. You have great ability, Natasha Romanoff. Don't worry, I don't eat people. Seeing Natasha Romanoff was still a little scared, Ron also shook his head and left. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.